All right, we are live. I'm with Adam Butler, and he is the author of Butler's DMT Field Guide, which is a no nonsense way to help you just figure out what the hell is going on over there on the other side, which is super mysterious. Breaks it down quite nicely in the book. And Adam, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I figured I'd kick things off by let's do something exciting. Tell me a couple of your most memorable trip reports. I guess they're called trip reports, right?
Getting right into it, huh?
Let's go.
Well, yeah. So first, thanks for having me. Huge fan of your
Mhm.
work. Thank you for sharing this type of information. Because honestly, when I was looking for esoteric information, alternative sources of information, just honest, authentic input. Your channel really helped me. So thank you. I'm honored to be sitting across from you, and I say that sincerely.
I
Um,
appreciate you. Thank you.
so yeah, big trip reports.
I love them, dude. I could go on the internet and read trip reports. This one right here is full of the trip reports, and I'm amazed as to how similar some of them are, despite being just unhinged.
Yeah. So we get into the DMT session that saved my life. We can get into the
Okay,
DMT session of where I met my future self, my interactions with Mantis beings.
dude.
I
Let's go.
visited the Akashic library.
Oh,
I felt as though I got abducted or sleep paralysis. Yes, there's a lot of meat there. Um, and I laugh and joke, but honestly, what led me to psychedelics, and I started with shroom before I got into to DMT, but it was to help with some mental health issues, and I was in a really dark place. So I approached DMT with the intent of, hey man, I need some help. I was pleading to the universe, so it wasn't
yeah.
like in a party setting or going down on vacation. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And now over the years in my progression of sessions, I can appreciate and I lean into more of the how do we use it for our benefit and the next step of human evolution type deal. But
Right.
when I was getting into it, it was to explore my inner psyche and to to figure out some shit. So
Right.
yeah, that first day, and I mentioned in my book, and I know some people that have experienced EMT, they're going to be like, "Yeah, bullshit." But I mentioned how that first day I took about 50 hits, and that was with a rig, with a vape pen cartridge. So I
Yeah.
can honestly say, if it was with a lighter or a bong, that number probably would have been taken down a little bit. But
Oh, sure.
um, so I guess just set the scene. I at 41 years old, had all the proverbial midlife crisis, all the bullshit that could break down, and we'll get into that later. But I started getting into shrooms for 3 or 4 or 5 months, 3 months, 4 months, um, going pretty deep. So 5 grams, 6 grams, pushing
Yeah.
it, 7 grams, where I would do an eighth, and then even midway through it, do another eighth, and I was getting really good therapeutic value. I was having really some hardcore realizations of holding the proverbial mirror up to myself, but I
Yeah.
didn't have that epiphany, that breakdown, that like shake up that I know that I needed to have. And then what I was hearing about DMT, so I had listened to the Spirit Molecule um, documentary, as well as read his book.
Right.
I
Right.
had, and Rick Strassman, I would say anybody looking to get into DMT, I would start with that book. And
Mhm.
I mentioned that in my book, that he would be really the reference to start
It's
with.
definitely the cornerstone.
Yeah, and just because it gets into the nuts and bolts research sciencey stuff, and my book being an approachable field guide that's 100 pages is not that, and I didn't want it to be that, because there's other
Right.
books like that out there.
Your
Um,
book is necessary for that community because everybody loves. I know I'm asking you for trip reports because that is what everybody loves, but so not frequently are people breaking down the step by step. I mean, the methods of use, how to make it, how to do it safely, and that is invaluable because early on for me when I got into it, dude, I was this stuff, your information was not available. So I mean, I was the guinea pig. I was my own guinea pig. And sometimes it went wrong, dude. And if I had your book a little bit sooner, I think I could have knocked down
well,
some of those, you know,
man,
uh, some of those
what a
fails.
What an awesome compliment. I appreciate that. And I take that wholeheartedly. And I mentioned somewhere in the book that's really why I wrote it, was because I wish I had this book when I was going through my shit. And
Right.
because I think there is a large group of people that will only listen to the doctors and the scientists and the white coats. And
Right.
I was one of them at one point in my life. And I appreciate their value. But then there's a whole group of people that won't listen to them and will only listen to the bald, tattooed, gnarly looking people like myself that have, kind of walked the street, so to speak. And
Right.
I wanted to kind of bridge that gap because, I can hang and bang with the best of the intellectuals. I've I was in the academic world for almost 8 years. I've had financial success. I've had all of that shit. And I go over that in the book too. So I felt as though, I've been on both sides of the pendulum, or I've been swinging pretty wildly on both
Right.
sides. And I wanted to bring that perspective. But,
There's a magical gray area in this middle path where when you're hanging out with the hippies, you're a scholar, and when you're hanging out with the scholars, you're a hippie.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
I think that's important because number one, it helps you stick out and it helps you become a voice within the noise. But also it keeps you from getting stale, and that's what I think is growing in this psychedelic community, is that it used to be so black and white. You're either a hippie or you're in a lab coat. And now there's this blending that's taking place where, I mean, I can see you right now. You look a lot like me, actually,
yeah.
by the
You're a
way.
handsome guy. uh,
My scalp greets yours, by the
uh,
way. But yeah, I could see you in a lab coat, but also at the same time, you might be. The opening of your book says, "Who the fuck am I?" And I was like, "I'm in the right space."
yeah, that's the question you need to ask yourself for sure.
Right. Right.
But so yeah, to put it into context,
Mhm.
that first day, and I find it's a very common story that DMT finds you when you need it,
Mhm.
and people always ask, well, how do I get it? How do I, can I make it? It's like it will find you. It'll present itself in your space when needed. I feel that's a very common scenario.
Yeah.
So a good friend of mine who knew my mental health issues, who knew that I was honestly in a suicidal place, knew that I was trying to use psychedelics and shrooms to kind of work through it, offered offered it to me. So listen, I have it. You have access to it if you want it, and it's yours. So I did, excuse me, as much research as I possibly could. So I read the Rick Strassman books.
Mhm.
I dug into the literature. I listened to as many podcasts, and I felt as though, not that it's something you can necessarily prepare for, but I had the respect and the reverence. I did the research, and I knew what my intentions were going into it. And
Right.
yeah, so we went to my buddy's house. We had a perfect setting, perfect environment. It was just him and I. We had a quiet place, and yeah, that was a day that saved my life. And I don't say
Wow.
that lightly, because honestly, if
Right.
I didn't get, and I had already had everything blow up in my life, everything from finances to relationship to health to threatening to kill people, all of that shit. And like
Damn.
I knew that I needed to figure some stuff out. So that day was a pivotal day in my life. And I think there's two takeaways from that day. I would say first, just that first hit, that initial pull. And I think it's follow the Terrence McKenna kind of rule of, take 3 hits if you can, take 3 big hits if you can push it one more, to always
Right.
try to take that one extra toke.
Right.
But that first hit, it felt so natural and it felt so innate. Now all of your senses start going wacky, and you have that vibratory hum that you just become engulfed with, and you can clearly tell that you just ingested a very, very powerful molecule. But
Right.
I felt safe. I felt natural. I
Right.
instantly felt connected back to a time when I was like 8, 9 years old.
Yeah.
There was a very familiar nasal sensation, taste, and smell, like in the back of my throat.
Right.
Um, and it felt as though the veil was removed, as opposed to with what I had been experienced with shrooms, where you can feel the poison entering your blood. You know that your senses are getting, yes, altered, but they're really getting like fucked up. Where with DMT, they get more clear, more enriched, more vivid.
Yeah.
And that first initial couple seconds, as profound and unique as it was, it felt very comfortable. I wasn't afraid at all, and I felt as though my body, that it was received in my body in a very natural way. And maybe this is a good point to interject. Um, because the fact that it is endogenous, that it is naturally created in our
Right.
own body, not
Right.
only in us, but all mammals, plants. A big reason why Strassman started, was initially interested in doing his research. So it's very different from shrooms or LSD or MDMA or something like that. That, when you ingest it, it's kind of like, oh fuck, what is this weird chemical I just ingested? Where this is
As
the
alien
just
as
the
it
opposite.
is, yeah, despite being totally unhinged, it feels natural. It feels right,
Yeah, one of Strassman's quotes from his book was that a lot of his volunteers were saying that it's more real than real, and
Right.
I attribute that to, um, in our normal walking state, we walk around with our five human senses, say at a maximum dialed up to 10. When you get
Right.
into these DMT states, you have another 10, 20, 100 senses, and it's dialed up to 1,000 million. Use whatever
Yeah.
analogy you want to make, but instead of having 100 data points for a 7-minute period, you've got 100,000 data
Right.
points for a 7-minute period. So how can it not be more real? How can you
That's
not have more of a well-rounded, with a bunch of different approaches with just it? Yeah, it's
Well, it was because you were talking about how different it is from mushrooms and etc. And the way I've always tried to explain it is that if you take mushrooms or LSD or peyote, that there's a static between the radio stations on a radio, right? So you can go from this radio station to this radio station, but there's static in between. When you trip, you sense that static between stations. Whereas with DMT, you skip the static and you're on the next radio station and it's crystal clear and it's real. And another analogy is that whenever people say more real than real, they say, what do you mean by that? I imagine like if you have a vivid dream and you wake up and you say, man, that dream really felt real. But now, obviously, I'm not dreaming anymore because this is real. It's like, imagine doing that again. And now you're in a place that is impossibly more real because you're not taking it in through your biological senses anymore. And that's what is very jarring, I think.
well, your biological senses, but not just your human dumbed down biological senses. No, I,
Right.
I still attribute it to a beautiful human body. But yeah, no, dialed into something certainly higher, certainly more enriching.
Right.
But that that feeling of comfort, was honestly because I didn't know what to expect. I had really kind of anticipated, and I don't want to dumb it down because anybody that takes that first hit is going to be like, holy shit. But it's a
Right.
holy shit in a very comforting, nurturing, hold you, loving way,
Right.
welcoming way. Not for me anyway. That it wasn't scary. But so that first session I mentioned, I think I took like 4 hits. So really profound, like I said, sensory overload. But it was really more of sit back and enjoy the 3D IMAX show where everything was just like holy shit. There was no entities, there was no conveyance of information, there was no profound insights. It was really just wow, this is a really cool space, and this is what it's like for my body to be operating at this elevated DMT enhanced level. Um, but again, I wasn't there for the sights and sounds. I was there to figure
Right.
out if I wanted to be on this planet still. So
What did that
and
space look like for you for your first time?
so I would say the instant um, addition of a vibratory, palpable, visceral hum that you felt. So instantly your body actually did start to vibrate and move. Um, that it was kind of like the sound of a cicada in the summertime. Like that
Yeah.
electric buzz. I
Right.
thought was like that you're dialed up now. Um, like I said, within that first hit, the nasal cavity sensation, the taste that was an instant thing,
Mhm.
and then obviously as I pushed the next couple hits on that first session, it really kind of got into, um, and this is I know we're jumping around a little bit, but the
Oh, you're
importance
fine.
of having the right environment and the right setting where
Yeah.
I had the pillows and the couch and the blankets and everything where as soon as I started really feeling it, I just sunk into the couch and put my head into it and pulled the blankets over my head and really was able just to enjoy it.
Right.
But again, no, it was just like, oh cool, this is a really hyper psychedelic space. I
Right.
feel comfortable, but and this is where DMT also, the fact that it's endogenous, but also that it's short-lived lifespan when you smoke it anyway. And this is primarily what I'm talking about when I say DMT, even though I'm sure we'll get into ayahuasca and the DMT brews. But smoking it lasts 6, 7, 8 minutes, and that's where I think the potential for therapeutic value really comes in, because you don't need to take an entire day, a weekend, or week off to travel someplace or to spend 12 hours puking or purging, or you can have intense psychedelic therapy and work.
Right.
8 minutes later, come out, full lucidity, integrate it, and then visit that place again.
On a lunch break, dude.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right.
And so that's where I say that those 50 hits kind of built up. So for the next hour, basically, I did another, 5 sessions, and each time pushing it a little bit further. So, I was doing, 5, 6 big hits, holding it in. Again, going into these realms that are really indescribable. And as best as an author, I try to describe them, and I can certainly, spit all the colorful language, but it really is just
what startled me the most about it was the 5 spatial dimensions. I couldn't put my finger on it for a long time until it finally came to me one day. I was like, what all these have in common? It was that it's every time I ever cross over, it's distinctly 5 spatial dimensions that we can't describe even with words, or unless we use mathematics, I don't know if
and if I could add to that, I'd say it's not only your own like conscious perspective that is in that space or in that fluid dynamic movement, and I think it is constantly like this weird fluid flux, but the information that's coming from it is clearly coming from a different dimension, and I guess I don't know, this is where I want to stay in my lane, and I don't know the proper physics or the proper terminology to use, but it is not 2D, it is not 3D, it is certainly, and that's where when you're talking about how the DMT space is its own unique thing, and it's not just a fabrication of your brain, and I know that's your opinion, and that's certainly mine, because it's how the fuck could as a human, I know I can't fabricate anything even remotely close to that. And I'll be the first to say, in almost a bragging way, how smart I am, how intelligent I am, how I went to college for 8 years, I got straight A's, blah, blah, blah. I've read thousands of books. I'm creative. No
so
fucking
we are
way.
After all, huh?
There's no way that my brain could even come close to creating not only the complexity, but the precision and the crispness and the directional intention and the specific conveyance of very, very direct information in a way that transcends everything, physics, architecture, space, and it's like, and that's where I'm very comfortable knowing that, this isn't just me.
It's disclosure.
This isn't me really hyped up on a couple of combination of drugs. This is this is my body being able to tap into or be exposed to something, and I'm just here as kind of a visitor.
Right.
Not to take away from the importance of the body as the receiver of it, but yeah.
Oh, of course. I mean, I think that the pineal gland as a transducer, we can pick up on realities that are much greater than the one that we are, born and used to. But when you say there's no way that my brain could conjure up these visions, not only is that absolutely true, but I did not know that little robots actually build your DNA until I saw them doing so in a DMT trip, and I thought it was a metaphor. This is what made me so.
That just gave me goosebumps, because I take that as literal. That's not like, oh, he's being colorful, look how creative he is. It's like, no, that shit's fucking real. It happened, and I believe it.
Which I might as well use that as an excuse to bust it out, but I drew them. Whenever they said, "I am you," and I was like, "Oh, by the way, this is after doing it like 50 times, so now I can kind of navigate. Practice makes perfect." But they were like, "No, I'm literally you." I'm like, "Oh, like we're all one." They're like, "No, we are you." And I was like, "They're like, we're building your DNA." And they showed me them doing it. Then they introduced me to a subatomic realm, which is a different story. But I looked it up after that. And then that's the first time I seen those animations they have out now. Those little robots that build your DNA, they walk across the little thing.
Yeah.
Dude, and I was at that point, not only I went from disclosure, like, okay, there are unseen realms for sure, to being like, oh, this can teach me stuff that nobody has known. Because I wonder, am I the first person to actually see the little guys who build DNA? Because we don't have photographs of them. They're too small. We have animations of them, but that's what they look like. And whew, that was a heavy one for me, you know?
Yeah, there's so many rabbit holes to go down there, but I want to one. So I've had similar experiences on having my body or being shown to me like how your body is properly used or how it operates. But I think to your point, there are a lot of people now sharing, and there are some famous ones about like like the double helix shape, how that was induced by some psychedelic trip, or like the
Oh yeah.
PCR sample test, or and there's a lot of stories about brilliant minds, kind of, and Aldous Huxley, that the doors of perception.
Right.
Great example of how you can be exposed to different information, but it's not, and it's not just story. And believe me, I'm sure we're going to get into it, about the stories of fairies and demons and angels and riding on phoenixes' backs and transcending all these planetary realms. And I believe me that, like, let's fucking go there. But there's real life stuff that we can take back that can be proven now with science, and
Right.
that can be proven just factually from the palpable results that takes place in myself, in you, and in hundreds of thousands of other personal stories. So
Right.
I want to make sure that if people are listening and they haven't experienced this, and it's just like, oh, this is just other fluff stories, and really he's breaking out his fucking coloring book of his drawings of the creatures that build his DNA, and it's like,
Right.
Yes. And if
Well,
you have any question, then try experiencing it, and you'll be shown exactly that, and then you won't have any question, and you'll know it. That is the truth.
There's two people in the DMT world. There are people who doubt its validity, and then there's people who have done it. And immediately, you could be Neil deGrasse Tyson, dude, make fun of it on a talk show, and then the moment you have three,
spend a weekend with me.
Yeah, right. And speaking of which, guys, you can actually email Adam, and he will get back to you. Right? It's in your book. You say if you have questions, email me. So yeah, that's really cool, by the way, that we can email you with questions and comments. So there's somebody out there with a glass bulb, and they're shaking, as you should be right before you take that first inhale. Give Adam an email. Say, let me know I'm doing this right.
Yeah, well, that's honestly been the absolute most rewarding part of the book, and no joke, to the date, this is the second year anniversary of the publication of that book.
Today is,
yeah.
Happy birthday, bro.
Yeah, man, it's fucking amazing that the road that this has been on. But the most important, and believe me, I love talking about these. I've been on some awesome podcasts. I've made some amazing friends, but the whole purpose and the book is based around mental health and helping people overcome suicide issues. And I've had dozens now of conversations, personal phone calls, emails, Zoom calls with people where it's a mutual exchange of helping each other go through this. And I just got goosebumps reliving it, because that's something that I was hoping for when I wrote the book, that yes, I want sales, and yes, I'd like to get out and share the message, but to get from the spectrum from 20-year-olds to 70-year-olds, from men to women to professional athletes to doctors to, all sorts of amazing people reaching out saying, Adam, you sharing your authentic raw story really helped me. And, or it helped, my family member listened to it. My wife listened to it and heard about you talking about your relationships and how it helped there. And it opened her eyes to whatever. And and we talked about this before recording, that's why we're doing this, yeah, the whole purpose of esoteric information and knowledge and connection with yourself and know thyself and all of that stuff is to live a happy, joyous, content life. And
dude, I didn't know what unconditional love was outside of the mouth noise. It was my first experience with DMT, which was actually one hit, because I didn't go through with it the first time. I didn't know you were supposed to, actually. And I remember the glow that you have in your heart, right? Where you don't feel your heart beating, but you feel it expanding. And I remember going, oh my God, that's unconditional love. I had no idea. Like, I could only fathom what it was, but I didn't realize it. I only considered it. And unconditional love is now something I can kind of almost now say that I can kind of grasp.
No, you got it. I can see it in your eyes.
Right. Well, it's conditional.
It starts with love of you. It starts with loving yourself. And this is where we can, we can tie it all in, but it
Yeah.
really, to the extent that you can love somebody else, or love anything, it's to the extent that you can love yourself. And
Yes.
that, and perfect segue to tie it back to that first day. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
until you can truly know yourself and understand yourself, all the good, the bad, the warts, the scars, you can't love yourself. And in my opinion, until you learn how to love yourself, you can't love anybody else or anything. But then just the flip side of that, as soon as you start loving yourself, it becomes so easy to spread it, share it, and
Yeah.
it becomes just a way of life. And never ever go back. Ever would I
Right.
ever go back to
And
the
that's
to the dark
valuable,
side.
dude. I am a marathon self-loather. So like that kind of shit is, I'm just too hard on myself, as I think some people could use more of, but too much is too much. And there's a ceiling to how much love you can put into the world. And that ceiling is right about where how much you love yourself. Because yeah, if you don't love yourself, it's impossible to share. Well, any love that you're going to be sharing with the outside world is going to be artificial or forced. And loving yourself isn't about ego. It's about acceptance, and it's about authenticity, which is, I guess, for lack of a better description, easier said than done. But DMT certainly, I think, helps that, because whenever you are shown definitively that the physical, tangible reality that we live in is not all there is, immediately the barriers of constriction, of claustrophobia that you have with living in a body evaporate. And you think to yourself, man, all these legends we hear about Anubis weighing your heart against the feather, and just mythology in general, or telepathy, these things that you're on the fence about so much throughout your life, that of course there's still bullshit out there, but now you know that there is unseen realms. It's a game changer. I could almost say that I can attribute a lot of my work to DMT. Not just causing me to write down these trip reports here, but it caused me to realize the things needed about sacrifice. And a lot of those things came to me almost like a chart over there in that realm. Sometimes they're so clear with their message. There's a tough love. You ever get the tough love?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's sometimes hard to swallow, but yeah.
Yeah, so and I definitely want to get into that topic too, because I just recently heard a new perspective on it that, a simple one, but I think is helpful. Uh, so I guess let's tie up some loose ends.
That's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I want to get to these mantis beings, dude. I'm not letting you get
no,
away
no.
without the
So
mantis.
that's why I want to get there, but I want to talk slowly. So I mean, we're in no rush with time. We can
Of
definitely
course.
unfold all this,
Right.
but it is exciting because there's so much to get into. But um, because we're talking about self-knowledge and doing the inner work, I want to add to that psychedelics as a class, I think, force you to do the inner work, the shadow work, to hold that
Mhm.
proverbial mirror up to yourself, where you can't lie to yourself when you're on 5 grams of shrooms. You can't lie to yourself when you're deep into a DMT state. And what I was doing, and I think what most people, unfortunately in this society do, we're drowning their shit and running from it with alcohol, with prescription pills. I was never into prescription pills, but I was a bad alcoholic. And
Right.
most people just won't confront themselves. But so part of loving yourself and knowing yourself isn't lying and covering it and masking it and putting on this persona and this fake social media shit. It's the dark, nitty gritty stuff that you really need to do. And then once you can do that, again, you extend the ability for other people to not be perfect and to have past, and to know that they're in their own kind of process of their journey.
Right.
But yeah, so loving yourself isn't this fake, like, oh yeah, well, if anything, it shines a spotlight on some of your worst aspects.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so that, and ultimately that's what happened that first day. So we're now an hour into me sitting there, on my buddy's couch. I've done it. I've hit it now, whatever, 30 plus times. I've had 6 separate sessions. But no profound insight. Once again, I was like, wow, this is definitely an exciting space. But what I'm here for answers. I need something. And that last session, I really set the intention. I prayed to the universe. I asked for help. And honestly, I pleaded and pretty much said, fuck it, man. Like if I don't get some sort of answer, this may be my last day on this planet. And I meant
Okay.
it. My friend
Oh.
fucking knew that that was the truth. And once again, and we'll get to my midlife crisis and what led to all this. But like I said, I was in a really shitty spot. And that last session, I took as many hits as I could, and it was probably 7 hits. It is hard, and I just sat back, and instantly all of the vibratory hum stopped, all of the sights and sounds stopped, and I was just in this suspended space. I wasn't ascending into some portal. I wasn't falling. I was just there, and I was just held, and I had this conveyance of information where it wasn't, an English speaking voice. It wasn't an entity. It wasn't some archetype. It was just this knowing that this DNA download,
Mm.
which I want to kind of reference that because as the stories progressed, there's a distinct thing that wasn't that. But in this particular case, the best way for me to summarize what happened was I had this amazing but fucked up past where I had all of these advantages, but all this shit that happened. But now I'm sitting here like homeless, broke, all this shit's going down. What am I going to do in the future? But I have every advantage still, so like I know my future's kind of bright. But I was running myself crazy trying to worry so much about the past and the future and trying to connect all these dots about how the fuck my life could have gotten to this point.
Right.
And instantly, like the 1,000 most important dots got connected, and it was kind of like, haha, you stupid human, is this really, this is the big thing that you're trying to figure out? Like, here they are, they're all connected, and those shattered, and then a million dots, and those connected, and then a billion
Right.
dots, and a trillion dots, and it instantly just kept kind of coming back being like, you fool, we can just keep doing this forever. The whole purpose of being in this time and space limited 3D meat suit, so to speak, is to be in the here, to be in the current now, to not worry about connecting to dots, but to appreciate each dot for itself, to not try to, to enjoy the quiet between the beat. And that's really where the information is. And, it's kind of corny, like some Ram Dass, like movie type shit, but it really was, oh, fuck. It really is just be here now, be here in this very
Mm.
second,
Yeah.
and don't spend so much beautiful internal energy and effort on the past of the future. And like I said, it sounds so basic, but I was really running from so much shit, and I didn't know where or how to focus it. And then once I realized, like, no, right here, this very second is how you change, and then you compile each second. And I
Yeah.
came out of that in a crumpled mess, crying on my friend's floor, just being like,
Yeah.
"Fuck, this is it." And honestly, since that day, I'm like financially, professionally, like all of the categories in life that I was at the peak of in my past. I'm not in that now on like in those categories. But I can honestly say that I'm the most happy, most content, most joyous. Every day I induce my own goosebumps. Every night I go to bed with tears of gratitude and joy. I wake up
Yeah.
every day excited to live. I have amazing interactions, amazing relationships, and it all started with that day where I stopped taking all of the shit for granted. I stopped making assumptions, and I just started with enjoying every sip of coffee, every bite
Yeah.
of ice cream, every time I made love to my beautiful girlfriend, every time I put on a clean pair of socks, literally the most basics.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and since that day, I've been living in that present moment, and that
Yeah.
was that was the no like fancy crazy stories, but that was the day that really was like, all right, cool. This set it aside from other psychedelics. This is different from shrooms
Right.
or LSD. And you know what, Adam, you are in control of this. You are an active part of what your future is going to be, and take control of your own shit.
Right.
And that combined with the shadow work that I had done prior with shrooms really set it off.
That's important. That it's a combination of work.
Yeah,
And
and then I was very fortunate where I had enough money and enough shit saved up, and like I said, I threatened to kill a guy that was associated with the business that I was working with, so I had no job. So I took over a year and a half, well, about a year and a half off, and just traveled the country. So I went to 40 different states. I went to all the national parks. I slept on beaches. I slept in my car. I was wandering train tracks at 3 in the morning. Um,
damn.
I did all of that, and I had my, I was lucky enough to have that spiritual journey where it was me, my car, and I just took off with no destination, no place to stay. I blew like 70, 80 grand, maybe 90 grand, and just said, fuck it. Because
That's kind of analogous of the DMT trip, with just having no destination, going in with an intention, but without a result
well,
in mind.
and no fear of death at that point. And I think maybe this is why, part of my story resonates, is that I've fucking lost everything. Like, and I'm raw about it. I've lost 3 long-term relationships, 2 high-paying jobs. I lost all of my houses. I became homeless. I mean, I was a self-destructive, narcissistic, belligerent, drunk ass, like blah 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 blah. Like I was fucked, and it was all due to my own making.
Yeah.
Really, no one to blame but myself. And it was with all of that happening, there was almost a really liberating sense of, I just don't give a fuck. There's no one can take anything away from me that hasn't already been taken away. I know that my worst enemy and the only thing in this planet that can take me down is me and my psyche.
Right.
That I'm not afraid of pain, death, another man. I'm not worried about getting beat up. I'm not afraid of jail. I'm not afraid of any of that fucking
Right.
shit. And it's
That's free.
it's so free. Where before I was tied to the rat race, keeping up with the Joneses. Let's keep making the money, and like.
It'll torture your soul, dude.
At
Yeah.
my peak, my monthly expenses I was paying out was like 10 grand a month. And I know, there are millionaires out there. Like, I wasn't crazy like that, but I remember just looking at my monthly expenses being like, what the fuck? I can make 120 grand just to cover my bills. And what am I getting out of it? I'm working 70 hours a week. I have no time, no vacations, no free time. And yeah, so that's
Just
that's a lifestyle that I never will go back to.
What am I doing? And how did I get here? And who am I? And
who the fuck am I?
Who the fuck am I, dude?
Because you got to add the passion.
And right, the passion.
No, but truly, if you're not sitting there with tears in your eyes, and I said it, like when my stomach full of snots, literally fucking
right,
pleading to the universe. But if you're just like, well, who am I? Then you're gonna get a half-ass shit response that's not true and authentic to you. But you really gotta ask yourself and the universe, and that.
Well,
ask for that honest answer.
The DMT realm responds to you according to your output and your frequency. And why that's important, I think, is because it's analogous of how the universe is, the world is. And you had mentioned a moment ago that it's all because of you, these things that happened. And people have this idea that things happen to them. And it's a really popular idea because that's how we assume things. But we live in a closed system that is the universe. Reality itself is a reflection. That you cannot fart without it at some point in the universe being brought back to your attention. No matter what you do, every single deed, good or bad, is going to go in to the system and then the matrix and then be returned to you. And DMT, it happens instantly. Whereas with reality, it takes a little bit more time. But that's the best way to show us. Because with the DMT, man, with that tough love, they'll try to teach you things that you'll say, hey, no, thank you, not yet. And that's sometimes the wrong way to go about it. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of this, wanted a magical experience. And very rarely out of 100 times that I've been with this molecule did I get the fun and fancy things that initially I was looking for. In fact, a lot of my experiences were actually dark. But I learned to pass the test. Once upon a time,
But now you say dark, but you just said how it put you on this creative path, how it looks like things in your life are taking off. You're creatively expressing yourself. You're helping other people find themselves. Even just hearing how you interact with your family, like you're clearly corrected some of the issues in your life. And so painful, difficult, absolutely. But and that's why I typically push back on the comment about having a bad trip, where like I've never had necessarily a bad trip where I was chased by demons or like a horror movie type shit. Bad stuff where you've got to face the shit that you've been running from, and you can't lie to yourself, where you've been able to lie or fool everybody else. Yeah, there's going to be some difficult stuff, but it is that tough love, but it's an objective kind of love that is there to help correct, where it's like, I mean, very, very rarely do you get some sort of information that isn't true to its core. It may
Right.
be painful, but the
Well,
fuck.
for me, the one in particular, and there were a few of them, was staggeringly clear. Like, so I got sent up, and there was this world of cubes, and I was sent specifically to this cube where it's this pink female gremlin robot lady, and she was gross. Like the stench and the texture was gross. Like it was like the bottom of a sink of dishes, right? And I declared I wrote it all down. I was like, I'm not here to see you. I don't want you. I want to see the jesters, right? All this stuff. And I was punished severely because they were like, what severely? It's only fucking 10 minutes. But they were like, okay, looks like you're not ready. And they blasted me out into this storm. It was chaos. So where basically the rest of the trip, I got no more information. So the next time I did it, I learned from that. And I was like, okay, so I came into contact with this guy. I call him Doc Doc because that's the noise he made. It was like a honking noise. And he was gross too. And I was like, okay, it's me and you, Doc Doc. What are we doing? And we danced. And at one point I was like, am I thinking or are you? And he was like, yes, exactly. And it was such a beautiful experience. So I embraced him despite him being gross. And he opened up the fabric of space-time and introduced me to this being, which was made out of just these glass, transparent, shape-shifting rectangles that didn't speak a lick of English, but it was basically I was shown something beautiful because I was accepting the darkness that I got from Doc Doc. And when that happened, he was so pleased with me as an ape, as a species of human, that he was like, okay, that's good. That's a great first step. Now check this out. And opened it up, and it turned white. After that, space-time wasn't black anymore. It was white. And I was shown beautiful things that I didn't understand whatsoever. And that's kind of shadow work in a way. And that's also kind of individuation. However, I don't take it as symbolic, though. I think what I saw was literal. But that symbolism transfers over into the literal, you know?
Well, and I think how it does for me in a practical day-to-day life, before my experience with DMT, and I've always been an honest person. But I always had, so my Pepe, so that's French for grandfather. You know,
All right.
my Pepe was one of the most influential people in my life, and I still think of everything every day that I go through. I always thought, you know, my Pepe's on one side, God, whatever that may be, is on my other shoulder, and I always felt as though I'm being recorded or being watched by both my Pepe and God, and that was something that always just held me honest and true and pure. To know that if I ever have to answer to either one of these two entities,
Yeah.
that I'll be able to say it and not have to be ashamed for any of my actions. Since doing DMT, now I have my Pepe on one shoulder, God on the other, and now I feel like I have these DMT entities above that, knowing that I will have to answer to these beings or entities the next time I go into that DMT space. If
Yeah.
you know, to your point, because they're gonna know your intentions. They're gonna know if you were off or if you misrepresented, or so it's a
Yeah.
way that kind of keeps me more humbled or more grounded now to know that if I have anything that I do against my intuition or against what I think is what my true purpose is, that yeah, I'm gonna fucking hear about it from
Right.
those entities or beings. Um,
Absolutely. And well, going along with that, so Miguel Rivers here says, I'm pronouncing that wrong. What makes you divine? And then he answers his own question, and he says, righteousness. I agree with that, but only to a certain extent. Not everybody can be righteous. It's the authenticity of self-acceptance that you're not, and the declaration of devoting yourself to being righteous more and more every day, praying to walk the righteous path is what I think is divine. To turn an eye to heaven and say, okay, there's something much greater than me that I can make contact with if I'm a righteous person. So no matter how hard it is, how much self-discipline it takes, and how much I have to sacrifice of my own pleasures on a day-to-day basis, somebody somewhere or within higher self, whatever it is, help me walk this righteous path better every day that goes by and learn from my mistakes by surrendering. That is what I think is divine, because
And know
whoever's
that
up
there
there
will be
watching,
mistakes. Know that
yeah,
you're not infallible, and that's part of
right,
it too.
absolutely, yeah. uh by by letting yourself be wrong is key. But whatever's in charge up there doesn't quite care the difference between literally walking the righteous path and doing your damnedest to do so. And that's what I've noticed, is that it's the effort that I think is measured, you know?
Well, if I could, we'll comment. Let's go to the mantis and the insectoids, because I do want to get into that. But then I do want to say how I did kind of get kicked out of the TMT space for kind of having some arrogance and cockiness, and that was one of
Same.
those like, oh shit. Um, but
Right.
so and I think people's experience with DMT entities are is going to be subjective. So whether it
Yeah.
be the Terrence McKenna machine elves, or the jesters that Joe Rogan talks about, or there's all these ways of kind of describing what is the ambiance or flavor of these interactions. And I think there is distinct groups, but the insectoid one or the mantis one, and kind of side note, that's what I studied at in college, was entomology. So if there's anybody that's like a bug geek, it is I so like, is it a mantis? Is it a specific species? No, but is it insectoid like, with its structure and its face, and the multiple legs and arms? And the answer to that is clearly yes, it is that form.
Yeah.
I found that those interactions with those typically are the ones where they're showing me how to operate my body truly and more accurately. So it's like they're the ones with the human guidebook or operation handbook. So when I experience
Elite.
them, they're teaching me how to breathe properly, how to pulse my blood properly. Where, but it is kind of like some tough love sometimes, where they just kind of go in and kind of manhandle you.
Yeah.
Um, I was just talking to Danny Gola. He's the DMT laser experiment guy. So
Yeah.
he's done a bunch of DMT sessions, and we were talking about this topic, and he was like, they're kind of like the technicians or the mechanics of that realm, where they go in and they know how to like operate, and know how to just get shit done. And
Right.
that's been my experience. My girlfriend Alicia, who writes in the book as well, she's had some some kind of terrifying interactions with mantis type stuff, but it's the same thing, where they're coming in and they're manipulating, excuse me, your body while in that state, but in a helpful way, to either unlock new potential, to increase your antenna, to do whatever it is. But
See, this is what is giving me goosebumps. I've seen the Mantis beings several times, and I didn't know of these commonalities or archetypes going into it. I'm talking to you about this for the first time. And yeah, in my experience, they are the scientists. They operate machinery. They operate the electrodes. It was, for me, it was more of an abduction experience type deal. Not to be confused with aliens, but there was a ship. There was equipment.
mhm.
There was devices. They measured certain frequencies, temperature, and they put all of that information into like a reservoir. It wasn't a digital screen, but it was like a box of sorts that collected information, and they measured my vibes, for lack of a better description. And that makes them different than these reptilian beings and these the jesters or whatever. And now I'm
Oh,
hearing you describe them the same way.
oh yeah, no, and yeah. So
Wow.
and maybe if we get into some of the other groups, then maybe there's some other similarities. And one other kind of cool experience that I had with those Jester and excuse me, not the Jester, the kind of mantis insectoid ones, was I had a couple experiences where I felt as though they latched onto my body, almost kind of like it was like a transformer suit, or like a
Mhm.
like a X-Men suit, where they were like, no, listen, like this is this is how your body can feel if you're dialed up. If all 50 of your senses are here and they're all dialed up, like this is what it
Yeah.
feels like. And it was like, when that pulled out, it was such a distinct feeling of,
Yeah.
oh wow. But if I could add to that, that also stays with you. You know, when you come out of these states, you realize that you are more powerful and capable than just your five senses. That you are more than your physical body. That you can
Right.
tap in and interact with energetic vibration and information that's outside of you. And you know that information or that knowledge of how your body works doesn't just leave you when you're not in DMT space. So I think that's a powerful thing to know that wow, you really are. Like we're talking about the comment in the chat about being divine. You know, you know you're divine when when you
Yeah.
know that you're tapped into something that great.
Right.
Um,
They say in the Corpus Hermeticum it says Poimandre says that man alone is dual in nature, half divine and half animal. And so we bridge the gap between these literal beings that exist in these etheric realms and animals or insects. And I wonder if sometimes they're visible attributes are a reflection of what we expect to see. But then again, I have a lot of trouble with that. But what I get a lot is that they are demanding that I turn it on. And I've had this over and over again. They're like, you can turn it on at any point. They're like, the air around you is alive. You can manipulate it. You can, all you have to do is flip on the switch. And I'm like, where's the switch? They're like, it's you. Just do it. And they're
I
very
am you. I
urgent.
am you.
Yeah,
Well, even you saying about that, how that was the term. I kept coming out the first few times with like these 3-word phrases that were
yeah,
just these like mantras. That were just like, you know, let it be, let it be.
right,
You know, it is all one. It is all, and it like, yeah, it's pretty powerful. But those mantis insectoid ones are very serious. Very, you know, they're there for a
right,
purpose. They're not fucking around. But
right.
it can be cold because it seems impersonal, but every time I felt as though it was because the intent was to benefit me or to upgrade my human body or to
Right.
expose me to new information.
They don't
So
have much time.
no, yeah, exactly. It does seem very, very like, yeah, we got shit to do.
Right.
Um, Now the Jester type fun machine up entities, those are and I've had such fun interactions with them because it feels as though they're, you know, the annoying like stepbrothers or little cousins that are literally I've had one time where I went in and there were like 5 of them on like scooters going around me kicking me in the ass just laughing, and like that was a sensation that I had, but in a fun friendly way, like yeah, haha, Adam's back, Adam's back.
Yeah, yeah.
um, it always seems to be like they're the ones that go and help you see the realm and explore the realm. Like they're happy to show you this dimensional space, and they're the ones that are kind of like showing you the amusement park. And look at here, this is fun. And you know, they're the ones that, in my opinion, like show you off to their friends, interact, get you kind of the keys to get access to other doors.
See,
But
this is what I've never had jesters, and I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. But
oh, they're fun as hell.
dude, and I mean, I'm not. So I have been mocked. I have been pranked. I have been disheveled by all means. Like they're not always taking me serious over there. There's been some moments, right? It's never been jesters. I've never seen clowns, and it's so strange that I've seen many of the archetypes, but the most common one, I've
You,
never actually had it.
these just for me, like just the vision that I get. I picture like the old cartoons when you're on like a conveyor belt and you have all of these things just kind of like coming at you, and it's not necessarily with like a jester hat or painted like a clown, but
Mm.
just very like fun,
So
entertaining look. No, I had one session where I was doing shrooms and I was pretty deep into it, and in the middle of my shroom session, I smoked some DMT,
oh
and
my god.
yeah, like I said, I was looking for some answers, and this was kind of one of the funnier ones where
Oh,
I came
shit.
into that space, and those jesters were there, and they were like, he's back, Adam's back," and he brought shrooms, because like I really feel like these entities or beings are very excited when a human goes into that altered and elevated consciousness space. Like they're
Right.
just as excited to explore
They're
us.
doing it.
And yeah, like, and
Yeah.
I use the analogy of like a firefly blinking in a field, where as a human, you know, if we're blasting into this DMT space, like we're going into this space and it's kind of like we're this bright light, and these entities or beings or energies are able to see that. And once
Mhm.
you start going into it often enough, they realize like, oh, this light is there and it keeps coming. And the does become a familiarity and a welcoming type feeling where, yeah, when I was in that space, they were all excited because it was almost like, yeah, Adam's back, and look, he brought the party and the disco lights and the fancy shit, where, you know, I was bringing another psychedelic to their realm, and they were excited about it because then they could experience my, like, you know, just to see me all colorful and lit up.
Did they
But
recognize the mushrooms as if it was like an old cousin or something?
they, I heard shrooms. Well, that was the conveyance. He brought shrooms. He brought shrooms. Like that was what they were
Wow.
saying. Like he's back. He's back. He brought shrooms. And then like in this dancing kind of like Wizard of Oz, like, you know, like, oh shit, all right, let's go.
He,
Like we're gonna
like
go exploring now.
Terrence McKenna says that the mushrooms speak to him, and they speak to anybody who has the audacity to ask questions, because most people don't think to ask a mushroom of anything because they think the mushroom is a catalyst of something to happen within. Whereas Terrence McKenna is like, no, it's alive and it speaks. And the mushroom said to Terrence that it was an alien being that has been traveling the galaxy, seeding itself onto different planets as a way to communicate with other species. Because the mushroom was basically like, well, through Terrence, was like, we don't land on the White House lawn. That's what you guys do. We are visiting you the best way we know how, which is through you, within you. And that was fascinating. And it's almost like, I wonder if DMT might share a similar thing. I know that they're not, DMT is a crystal, but I mean, what's to keep that from being alive any more than a bacteria or an organism like a mushroom, you know?
But weren't you just going on a riff about like your one bad comment on your book was somebody calling out that the
Oh,
mushrooms didn't have DMT, and you're like, no, in fact, it does have DMT or some shit.
yeah, Amantia muscara
Uh,
mushroom, and I might be saying that wrong actually, so he can riff on me about that. But I'm very grateful that Book of Wonderful Suffering has a 4.8 out of 5 on Amazon. Please read the reviews. They're all, there's a lot of reviews, but one guy was like, decent book, but he was wrong about the mascara mushroom. And I was like, maybe I was wrong. No, I wasn't.
Watch now, he's gonna write a shitty review on my book.
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
there's a lot there to be said about plant-based medicines, natural, like having a natural connection with Mother Earth, and steering away from the pharmaceuticals and the shit that, you know,
Yeah.
that doesn't connect you. But you know, there's a lot that can be said about the interconnectedness of mushrooms in there. You know, there's a couple of great movies and documentaries on it that show just how connected all
Right.
that shit is. But
Well, if anybody ever wonders, and I might pass the ball to your court about this, the difference between DMT and all other hallucinogens is very stark and very clear. Number one, uh, so psilocybin comes from a mushroom. The mescaline comes from peyote. Each one of these things comes from a different plant. THC comes from weed. DMT doesn't come from one specific thing.
it's
It
everywhere.
comes from everything. And you can have a DMT trip at home by breathing specifically. You know,
Yeah.
so that is it. First of all, get the word drug out of here because it exists in your liver, in the grass outside. It's so it happens to be highly concentrated in a acacia strain, but I mean, it's in everything. But also, DMT is the most illegal thing that you can have on you. If you get busted with mushrooms, worst case scenario, you go to jail and you get bailed out or whatever. Maybe you get a hefty fine, but you're probably just going to get a ticket. With DMT, it's immediately 15 years in prison. There's no
Fucking
like,
knock on wood.
what is that?
Yeah.
Like, why take the one thing that is most abundant and life changing, which I mean, I know we already know the answer to this, but it bears saying, you make it that illegal. You'd be better off getting caught with an underage kid and a gun than DMT. And that is saying something. It's crazy what they do to these people.
Yeah, and especially when, and this is why I wanted to share part of that message in my book too about the recipes, and you know, maybe two disclosures here in one shot. As we talk about the psychedelics, you know, psychedelics are not for everybody. DMT is definitely not for everybody. You know, do your own research, and you know, talk to people around you that you trust before you just hopping into it. That being said, DMT is so easy to make, so easy to produce. It's easier than making your own beer or wine. It's easier than growing weed. It's a simple extraction process.
Right.
And to the point you just made, um, it's found in my understanding. There was a quote, I believe, in Strassman's book about how the research is now like they'll get more surprised if they don't find it in measurable concentrations as
Right.
opposed to finding it, and that it's everywhere, that it's ubiquitous. Um, there are multiple plants that you can buy legally, including being shipped in the U.S., that have high enough concentrations where you can make these recipes, and they're just simple
Right.
extractions.
And your
So
book breaks it down step by step, and that is a beautiful thing. People ask me all the time where to find this stuff, and I'm like, you
make it.
already got it.
Yeah. Well,
You already got it.
so a couple of things about those recipes. Those are not my personal recipes. Those are found online.
Right.
They're everywhere. And there's a bunch of actually like videos, not from me, but videos of people making it. But it's for the crystals. It's a really really simple extraction process. Now there are some chemicals like hardcore paint thinner and lye that you want to make sure you don't get in your eyes and skin contact. But it's basic chemistry 101. Anybody that has just with some serious intention.
Right.
Can make the crystals very, very easily. And honestly, $200 worth of product will give you a lifetime supply and enough to share with anybody that wants. The ayahuasca or DMT brew, and the difference just ayahuasca is two specific plants where, as we mentioned, DMT can be found in a bunch of plants, but also the MAOI, so the inhibitor that prevents that enzyme from breaking down, you can get that from a bunch of other plants.
Right.
So when I say DMT brew, it's in addition to ayahuasca, but those are even simpler. It's brewing a
Right.
strong tea. It's literally, putting two ingredients together and boiling it.
Right.
So again, not condoning anybody to do anything stupid or illegal, but like in my particular case, again, I didn't give a fuck because I wasn't going to be here, so I wasn't worried
Right.
about the legal consequences, and that's hopefully where sharing stories like this will change. And I also jokingly say in my book about how, man, if all like the policymakers or the politicians would do an ayahuasca session or have a deep DMT trip,
Well,
this is kind of like what Terrence McKenna was saying. Like, if you don't believe me, or if you don't believe that it will have profound transcendent effects, then fucking try it. And
right.
that doesn't mean that everybody's gonna agree on everything and it's kumbaya and rainbows and butterflies. No, but you approach things with a level of respect, a level of desired communication with, just a completely different perspective on life and how do you approach solutions, as opposed to pointing the finger at everybody else. You kind of take accountability for yourself. And yeah, I think, there's a lot to be said about, what would happen if more people did have access to this, if it wasn't such a
Right.
legal hurdle or a
It should
fear.
it should
But
be
you know what? If I
mandated
could, I
for
want to just say
politicians. Go ahead.
part of I'm very impressed with I don't want to say like no give a shit attitude, but I've had a lot of like librarian looking older people, the professionals, the people that you think no in hell would they even remotely be interested in it, are calling me being like, or sending me emails being like, I'm making recipes. What about this step? I'm finally doing it. Or hey, I've blasted off now 3 times, and it's like, holy shit! Like, I wanted to share the message with you, but I didn't really think you'd have the balls to take that leap. And it's because, for a lot of these people, if at 70 years old you're interested in doing these types of things, that means, well, I shouldn't make assumptions, but it's like that means all the other issues or the other ways that you try to address your problems didn't work. That you're
Right.
still trying to figure out shit. Or, I met another gentleman who retired, and he's like, now that I'm retired, I just want to explore these altered states of consciousness because it's fun.
Right.
I don't have to make any more money. I'm comfortable, and this just seems like a cool hobby.
Right.
And that should be something that's accessible. And again, for the fun, exciting stuff like sex, art, and science, but for the real important stuff like mental health. And this week alone, I've had 2 personal, very close to me, conversations about suicide and mental health, where it's like real life shit. Where there's a man in the hospital right now as I speak that I'm saying prayers for, and it's like, what the fuck? And not to say that, well, if he just would have done shrooms, that everything would have went away, but
Right.
man,
Well, Let me
it,
ask you this. This might be a bit more of an important question, is set and setting, and obviously not to repeat any cliches, but it's very important. But so you, in order, let's say you're having these suicidal thoughts, right? Going into a hallucinogen with those thoughts is a disaster. So that shouldn't be step A to B, but so how would one go from, okay, my life is not the way I imagined it and I need to redirect it, right? But you can't be feeling that anxiety, that depression, and then go into an altered state of consciousness, or else it's going to be amplified. And actually go about getting into the mindset despite their life being chaos.
yeah, it's a delicate subject, and I certainly don't act like I have all the answers. I guess I can share my experience and what
Right.
what others have shared with me. Um, is that there has to be a desire for change. And I think if people are turning to psychedelics, they're looking for a shakeup. And so I would just suggest to somebody that if the intention is to shine a spotlight on yourself, to figure out what these stresses are in your life, that um, it's not going to be easy, but what's the alternative? And maybe like, and I was talking to a buddy the other day who was in a dark place. And you almost like, I said, this is going to be fucked up to say it like this, and please don't take this the wrong way. But I said, I'm so happy for you that you're telling me you've reached like rock bottom. He was 8 days without having a drink of alcohol, because he had just had all this shit happen. And I'm like, that means like you've been through the worst of it, and now you can
Right.
start rebuilding.
Right.
So yes, very delicate. Where if you're on the edge, should can psychedelics push you over that proverbial cliff? Yes. So I got to be very careful on saying that use it to help with your mental health. But um, in my particular case, it really did help. Now, I guess with me, I had 10, 15, 20 big external glaring red flags in my life that was just like, listen, asshole, you got to change, you got to change, you got to change, you got to change, you got to change. And I ignored all of them, or I pushed back on all of them. And
Right.
psychedelics was the first time where the only thing to push back on was me. The only person that I had to confront was me. The only
Yeah.
person that, as I'm looking back at it, and maybe this is where we can go into a little bit of my background, where I say how I was, this rich, spoiled white kid from New England that was raised with a silver spoon. Like I said, I went to college for almost 8 years. My grandfather gifted me close to 100 grand when I was young to start businesses. I have amazing parents, amazing great grandparents. Um, I've had every advantage possible, and I lost everything. So I lost 3 long-term relationships. I got a restraining order with one of them where I got kicked out of my house. Uh,
Ooh.
I quit a job where I was making about 180 grand a year to being a home inspector, and I was doing that for a while. And not that that's crazy money, but as a young man,
Uh,
I was banking and
oh
doing
yeah.
pretty good. Well, I quit that job and then got an even better job where I was selling marble and granite to a bunch of rich people on Martha's Vineyard, and I was getting 10% commission. So I was going out there and selling 200 grand worth of granite in an afternoon. Like you can imagine the type of money that you were pulling in. But um, I had
But
somebody in the company fuck me over $900, and at that point in my life, $900 was nothing. But it was a matter of principle where
yeah.
I had all these women issues, and I felt like women were the issue, and yeah, it's easy for them to screw you. But I had this brotherhood with these guys, and we were making money, and everything was good. And I just got so fucking butthurt by this guy having the audacity to take to fuck me over this $900. And
Right.
like I said, I threatened to kill him, and I meant it, and it got really serious really quick. And he lived like 3 blocks from where I lived, and that was on a Sunday night. So that Monday morning, and I knew that like we had this confrontation at the office, and then it was like fuck, like now what? And I knew that I was either gonna go back and like I said, do what I was gonna say or whatever. So like I said, that was a Sunday evening. Monday morning, I woke up, and I'm living in the Cape at the time, and I said, fuck it, I'm driving to California to hug a redwood tree. And that's what I did. I packed a backpack. I had a nice Audi S5 sports car, 2-door coupe. And I said, fuck it, I'm out. And I just drove 26 hours straight from Cape Cod to Kansas City, Missouri. Camped out there for a night. And then just, like I said, I spent over a year just traveling. Now, I did come back to kind of set up shop and kind of check in here and there. But I say all that because at what point, do I need to take responsibility for what had happened where,
Right.
that there's every advantage, every possible thing where there was no one to point the finger at but me. And,
Yeah.
so I was instead of, and then now, so how to fix it? It was, well, do you get a better job? Or bang a hotter chick, make more money, get a fancier car, get a bigger house? And it's like, no, that didn't mean shit either. Like
Right.
that can all get taken away with a snap of a finger. So
Right.
for me, psychedelics really not only put my prior past in perspective and put it in a place that I could now learn from it, but it helped how I approach the future. And that's the big, the big part of the mental health part. And I would also say, for me, it was this big gradual lead up of all this shit happening. But I think that a huge part of the therapeutic value of psychedelics are these people with trauma that instantly happens. So the guy loses his wife and 3 kids in a car accident, or the military guy loses his whole fucking squad by a bomb or something like that. Where
Right.
it's now, what compartment in your brain do you put that? It's like there is no compartment, and psychedelics allow, like, so if that
Yeah.
information has no place to go, it's going to rattle around in your brain and it's going to drive you fucking nuts. And that's what
Right.
happens with the PTSD and these people that are just driving themselves crazy. Where psychedelics, I think, allow for either access to that compartment or that compartment to be made. And
You're
um,
right.
so it's not a cure all. It allows the information to be put where it needs to be put, where then you can process it. So
Right. You got to do the work yourself, but it will point out where that work needs to get done. And
absolutely. Yeah, I say that it finds the crack in your psyche that
yeah.
only is there, and it knows to hone in on it completely subjectively, you personally. Because I think, if a therapist sees 5 people a day or 10 people a day, or it's like no one knows you and your inner workings and your trauma and your past and your self-doubt and all of the stuff that your
Right.
self-sabotage better than you. And
Right.
it's like I said, it's very empowering to be like, oh, that's where that fucking scab is.
Right.
And then be able to work on it.
There's safety within. There's a place within that is absolutely safe. Nothing can touch it. It's almost no wonder that they call it light, whether it's a metaphor or literal, because the human body, where we feel the pain and these emotions, you can hang a hanger on something. You can burn something that's tangible. You can hurt or destroy things that are tangible, but you can't hang something on a beam of light. And people, when they find out that epiphany, that moment where you find out, oh my gosh, there is a thing, a place, whatever adjective, noun would work for that. There is something within that is, no matter what, always safe. It's completely untouchable. And you can go there and you can be that space at any point in time ever. In a mild sense, I guess you could call it mindfulness, but in a more drastic sense, that it's a walking meditation that once you find it, it's really hard to shake. And you talk about, oh, what's next? Should I get the better job, the new car, or hotter chick, or whatever it is? And whenever you encounter that hyper safe space that no one can ever take away from you, all of those external things that typically make people happy become frivolous. And it's almost like there's a bonus. I remember with DMT several times sitting still after doing it, not tripping anymore. It's already come and gone. And just sitting still for the first time in an empty room with no stimulation going on around me. And just, as simple as it sounds, just existing.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
It's
It's
right.
so fucking beautiful. So much
Yet
better than a shot of
ironically,
whiskey
it's
or
right.
whatever.
Sometimes it's unbearable. So for me, sitting still is unbearable. And I don't know where it comes from. And I would still be unable to grasp the concept of sitting still if it wasn't for DMT. Because I don't want to say it allows you to do so, but it's almost like it gets in you, and it's like you have not relaxed a moment in your life. Let's go ahead and get that all straightened out, you know?
And so I've had that feeling, and I feel like I carry that through everything. And corny example, but my cranberry juice has a splash of lime in it because it's
Mhm.
like, why not just to have that extra whatever? Or I always have like really good strong black coffee that's like in
Yeah.
whatever. Like only wear a t-shirt that's really comfortable. Only because you realize how worthy you are
Yeah.
to experience it, and how lucky you are, and how fortunate you are, and how in a blink of a fucking eye that can all be taken away,
Yeah.
through our own making or not. And yeah, a lot gets wrapped up in that, where you're not looking for any outcome. You're comfortable. You kind of surrender to whatever is going to happen. You're not fearful of death. You're not, because you know that your energy is going to transmute into something else or greater. Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of this stuff is really simple, but you, instead of always trying to force a plan to happen, you kind of just relinquish it and sit back and be like, maybe that's what I want, or something better. Maybe,
Mhm.
and the more and more you get dialed into your purpose, it seems like something better just seems to happen. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at in my life now, where I have no idea where the fuck I'm going to go as far as what my next career is, how I'm going to make money. Right now I'm making 20 bucks an hour being a landscaper, when I used to make, $1,000 a day, fucking shaking hands with people. Um,
Mhm.
how this all gets incorporated, and, what's the balance I find, I have no idea, but I don't fucking care. Like, I'm writing my next book. I'm already halfway done. It's awesome. I've got a bunch of cool podcasts lined up. Um, I'm befriending really cool, like, intelligent people like yourself, and like some of the last podcasts I've been on, and that I have no anxiety, no stress, no whatever. And full
Yeah.
disclosure, as I share my rawness, as I'm sitting in my fucking parents' basement, where I don't own a home, where I used to own 15, when I used to have a shitload of money coming in bank accounts where I've got none. So I'm certainly not sitting here being like I've got it all figured out, but I know what not to do. I know not how to bang my head against the wall, not to sweep
Yeah.
it under the rug, not to point
Right.
my fingers at somebody else to solve my problem.
Yeah.
And that alone is a quality of life that, so many people that had, like I did, all of those other things on paper, but my quality of life was fucking shit, which is why
Right.
I was starting my morning with bourbon in my coffee and being belligerent and just bleh. So
Yeah. I've noticed that we think we know what we want, and that makes us try to control things to try to get specific results. But when you surrender the results, that is not to say give up on anything, or you do the work. Of course, you make those sacrifices, you take care of your foundation, build the foundation strong, and the rest will follow suit. But when you surrender specific results, you end up getting something better than you would have intentionally planned for in the first place. That's as difficult as it is simple, though.
yeah, and I think that whether it be in personal or intimate relationships, whether it be with your career, whether just, yeah, there is a
Right.
sense of now, again, that doesn't just mean be complacent and kind of like whatever, become lazy, but uh
Of
you can't
course.
be OCD so pent up where you're just driven
Well,
too
there's
much.
there's the combination. Like people, they remember when the book came out, The Secret, and everybody was under the impression that they could imagine their way into a better life. They left out all of the shadow work. They
Yeah.
left out all of the discipline. They left out all of the sacrifice. It's that combination. So you do the sacrifice, you do the work, you build the foundation, but then they're absolutely correct. You do work within too. Visualization just before bed is a game changer that people they sleep on, no pun intended. But often people, when they are drifting off to sleep, habitually run through their mind the things that could go wrong instead of the things that could go right. And they don't realize that they're programming their subconscious mind through the dream state to expect those results. Uh, those results are a return of what you've put out. And I'm not saying it's magical, but it's vibes, it's frequency,
Yeah.
and it's a reflection. It through cause and effect is going to come back to you, because when you do visualization exercises, you are changing the way that you speak and act from within. And then the way that you speak and act is going to infiltrate the world and then bounce back to you as results. It's literally, it's that simple. It's just cause and effect. There's nothing magical about it. Unless you want it to be magic, that's up to you. A person can do that. But yeah, it's the immediate return of the DMT realm is a reflection of what happens here in, well, quotes, real life. And whenever people experience DMT, that disclosure, it helps them realize that sort of key that unlocks those difficult doors, you know?
If I could, I don't know if we've talked about this in any of our emails or text, but
Shoot.
using DMT in kind of setting it up for lucid dreaming. So that's a way of using
Mm.
DMT that I absolutely love doing. So like right before you're going to bed, like while you're getting into sleep, get under the covers, do all that, and then take your rip and go pretty deep with the intent of you're going to shut your eyes and go into that space, but then just try to fall asleep. And you can kind of like extend that DMT into like a lucid dream state where that's that's a
Okay.
that's a fun that's a fun
So this isn't like the full
practice to try
3
to do.
reps.
No, it is. Yeah, I try to
Oh,
go full blast, but then know that I'm in a comfortable place, the lights are off, and then just like instead of trying to sit up, integrate it, write in your journal, try to process it
right.
all, you just try to no do it at the end of the day when you're tired and just go into that restful sleep. And it's that's a fun one because you don't it's
Wow.
like this fuzziness of like, where does the DMT trip end, where does the dream state stop? And it's like you
Right.
wake up, for me, wake up the next morning at like 4:30 in the morning being like, what the fuck just happened? Like
Dude.
that was
Well,
that
what
was a
is
good
so
one.
confusing about that is that DMT causes our gamma frequency. So we're actually super hyper awake while we're on DMT. And so I think it was either Strassman or who was it that found out that, let's see, where is it at here? Um, our gamma patterns go into like super high mode while on DMT. So people, here it is. People assume that DMT is causing you to dream while you're awake, and it's actually quite the opposite. Let's see here. This says ayahuasca, but tomato, right? The study explored that ayahuasca, the stimuli are applied in rapid alternating instead of consistency. It concluded that ayahuasca induces changes of gamma oscillations in the visual pathways, that is gamma between 20 and 70 hertz. Brainwave oscillations are prominent in the active brain. Let's see, where is it at about being awake? Uh, the speed shows the binding of several sensory inputs into a subjective percept or performing memory tasks. Gamma synchronization may explain some experiences of altered states of consciousness, for example, like seeing sound. But but basically, yeah, high gamma is shared by Zen masters when they put the EKG electrodes on Zen people who can get into the meditative state. They don't go into sleep, into delta. They go into gamma, which is more awake.
Buzzing
So talk
high,
about,
yeah, high
yeah,
vibratory hum.
right. So
But
more real than real indeed. And by the way, this is Inner Paths to Outer Space, if anybody's wondering. But
if it's throwing
yeah,
around other books kind of on this topic, and I mentioned him in my book, Dr. Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural.
yeah,
I thought that book was really good as far as understanding the importance of, he used the terms brain and heart coherence, of
yeah,
really having the importance of controlling the physiology of your body, understanding, the metabolic process where how DMT as well as serotonin and melatonin and all those things are broken down. And it does, to your point about the monks that are meditating, uh, it's now science is proving kind of what you're just saying, that they can get into this state where they're clearly tapping into something different. And it's we have access to all of that. And that's also a big part of my kind of message, is that this isn't something unique to you or I. This is this is something that's accessible to everybody. But it starts with knowing that you're in control, that you're the master of your own body, that your own physiology. But if you can kind of master the brain heart connection, where you can get to the point where, you're comfortable going to bed with the intent of lucid dreaming, with an extra DMT bump, with it, you just, and I think this is where those insectoid and mantoid beings coming, where they're like, no, like, this is it, man. This is how you can add a supercharger, a turbocharger. This is the rocket fuel you're gonna add, and you're in control of that.
Right.
It takes practice, like anything, but I think DMT and psychedelics kind of give you that cheat code, where instead of having to go for 20 years and pray on top of a mountaintop or go into a
Right.
dark cave for weeks and weeks, you can get a peak to be like, oh, that's what the mountaintop feels like, and then now
Right.
know, and that's no fluff as far as getting producing your own endogenous DMT. Where I've done the breathing the breathing exercises,
Right.
and the deep meditations, and the first time I did it, and this was after I'd already smoked DMT multiple times. And I watched one of those videos online, and I kind of got into it, and I was almost kind of like, oh, this is bullshit. Like, knowing hell this is going to be even remotely close to smoking DMT.
Right.
But it was. And the first thing that really connected it was that same nasal cavity sensation that I mentioned on that first day.
Yeah.
It was like this weird snot that was dripping, but it wasn't snot. It was something else. And it was like, fuck, that's that taste. That's the smell. And if anybody hadn't smoked DMT, they would just be like, oh, this is some weird snot or something.
Right.
And but having tasted it and knowing what it was, I was like, oh shit, this is it. And then you start feeling the vibration, you feel the hum, you get that energetic, like, oh fuck. And then maybe not as like crazy profound spinning mandalas and like Alex Gray type artwork, but clearly an elevation of your senses where you can connect to something higher. And I would say, maybe even more satisfying, because that you're producing it yourself. And and a big part of that too is, in order to do that, that means you need to take the time for yourself. And that again, these basic tenets, but how many people don't take the fucking 10 minutes, half hour themselves? And to do that alone, that practice alone, just to sit there, be like, oh, I'm going to meditate and breathe for 20 minutes or half hour, is very helpful. But I
don't skip a day. I do not skip a day of breathing exercises, sometimes twice a day. And, people describe the scent or taste of DMT as being like mothballs or whatever. There's different, it's very distinct, of course. But whenever my routine is different than Wim Hof. It's like a combination of Huberman, Dispenza, Wim Hof, and there's like a third guy. And I incorporate all these things into one 11-minute practice, and it's in rounds. At the third round, I get a distinct nasal, like mothballs. I can smell the DMT, and then when I go to exhale and hold my breath on that exhale, dude, it's communion. I experience communion. Now, am I zapped into an alien world of sci-fi where I'm surrounded by machines that are also alive? Not quite, but I do get a moment where I get to communicate with somebody, something, somewhere that might be my higher self, might be an angel of some sort. I don't know. And they never really answer you specifically, but they will answer your questions. They will guide you. They'll alleviate your
you get insights, you get those intuitive thoughts. It's almost like a creative flow state where you're opening channels.
I put a notepad or my phone microphone on right next to me. I do the breathing exercises, and I don't ever go one episode of Library of the Untold. I never finish a script without doing the breathing exercise to get like the big ending, the twist ending, or how I'm going to do the intro, or what transitions are going to be. Those things, I don't even know I'm writing them. I don't think I'm writing them.
I love it.
Because they come to me whenever I'm doing the breathing exercises. And this is going to sound really weird. The guy who gives me a lot of my ideas is a really sassy, funky black dude. He's like, Patrice O'Neill almost.
Awesome.
And he makes fun of me, and he thinks I'm silly. And he's like, oh, that's a hot idea right there, but you don't want to mess it up. And if you're doing that idea, you have to be careful with it because people will think this. And I can see it from an outside point of view because I'm too close to my own shit to see it objectively. So he will point out to me these things about what I'm doing from other people's point of view. And that's a nice archetype of ayahuasca, if I'm not mistaken, where you actually see your life from
What, Patrice O'Neill?
from Patrice O'Neill's point of view, right?
No, he's the archetype, the
Right.
ayahuasca. But,
It's crazy, but yeah.
I think an important part about that too is the importance of your inner child, and not like for you just telling that story and being comfortable sharing it, being like, no, I do tap in, and I do, like, there is kind of these fun interactive entities. But that's where I love kids and younger kids, and I was a substitute teacher for a few months at an elementary school.
Man, you done everything, dude.
I tried. I was actually it was in the inner city of one of the roughest towns in Rhode Island, and I fell in love with all these little kids, and I was almost too empathetic, where honestly I was coming home every day and just crying at the dinner table because I couldn't take their stories, and I was getting ready to start like knocking on doors because I would hear what was happening to these kids at home. But yeah, that's a story for another day. But but the fact that children are so connected still to source, to infinite information, to God, whatever it may be, but they have, you have your imaginary friends, you have your guardian angels, and that's a big aspect that I think adults lose over time, is that connection to those guiding forces or those energies. I mentioned my Pepe, and then I have my interpretation of God, and I reference them all the time. But I think it's important to talk out loud, to speak to those entities, to ask for information, and not to be too proud to be like, oh, that's hippy dippy woo woo shit. It's like, well, who better to get the answer from? Some guy you're paying $240 an hour for therapy who's just gonna feed you shit. Like, I don't know.
Well, imagine an ant thinking that believing in humans is hippy dippy. It's with the hubris we have to think that it stops with us. So there's like atoms, molecules, bacteria, insects, animals, humans, and then that's it. Just stops right there. You can't, all of those things, they can't look up to see the next thing. They can each look down, but none of those things can look up. An ant can't look at you and say, oh, that's Joe right there, but you can look down and see the ant. So in the same fashion, if we're looking up, we might see a planet or a solar system, but we certainly can't see the dimensions of which it is alive, because we're restricted in that aspect for whatever reason. Something's been shut off with us, which actually, I want to ask you about this. This would be a good segue. Children, I think, are closer to source, obviously. Their pineal gland is popping, right? So the biggest cause of calcification of the pineal gland is aging. Not to mention fluoride, but that's a different subject. But aging causes the pineal gland to calcify. So children, they remember past lives, they have imaginary friends. All of these things I don't think are fictitious. I think that they're literal. But so what was the question I had for you about the pineal gland and DMT? I wrote it down somewhere. But what do you think is going on when it comes to the pineal gland being a receiver and it being shut off at some point? DMT seems to turn it right back on, whether it's for our own good or not. I don't know why that just happened.
But that was your pineal gland giving you the thumbs up.
I suppose so. But
shit.
What do you have any comments as far as, like, because now we know, it used to be speculation that DMT was in the pineal gland, but the pineal gland makes serotonin, melatonin, and DMT. We know what melatonin and serotonin do, but we don't know why DMT is produced by the pineal gland. Do you got any hypotheses?
No, I think there was a recent study where they found that the concentrations of DMT were like comparable to other neurotransmitters. So it's not like just trace amounts, that it's actually in significant proportions. Again, I don't know enough about like the brain chemistry to know exactly what's going on, but that's why I try to defer to the Joe Dispenzas, where they talk about like this, piezoelectric electricity that can be had by the crushing of these crystals on the pineal gland
Right.
and like all this stuff happening. And like Andrew Gallimore goes into like microtubules and like how there's like quantum computing happening at levels and stuff. Like there's a lot of weird shit that goes on with with our physiology. I don't know what exactly is happening. Is it very clear that elderly people as well as then, and so this is a good topic too, where it's not just altered states by DMT or psychedelics. People that have dementia or Alzheimer's or temporal lobe epilepsy, people that have migraine headache auras. There's a lot of like that the podcast telepathy tapes with the autistic nonverbal children, where these people are connecting to something greater than or bigger than.
Yeah.
Um, I think all of those things prove or point to the fact that our bodies are typically limited, and maybe this is where no, this is where like Aldous Huxley's concept about the reducing valve, of that your consciousness is basically a reducing valve, I think is applicable, because that oh yeah.
I had to show him the book. I had to do it.
It's perfect.
It's worth it. Fuck it. All
It
right,
is. No, it's an awesome book, but and it's a very basic concept that basically, in order for us humans to survive, we have to basically take out so much of the information that is bombarded us, and we only pick up on such a small percentage of the electromagnetic wave, whether it be light, sound, all of those things. And
right.
There are obviously ways that we're able to become more refined or heightened to tap into those things. And
Right.
yeah, even I don't know if it's just simply like crusting up of the pineal gland or what, but
Well, it's crazy because nature doesn't do anything on accident. DMT surpasses the blood-brain barrier. Nothing else can do that except for the molecules that it produces. Even like, tobacco, the most common things, caffeine, they don't actually pierce the blood-brain barrier. There's a protection that takes place, whereas DMT slips right into our cerebrospinal fluid, slips right in and out as if it's got a wide open door. So it's got a purpose, and it's very important. It's up there with those two other chemicals that run our life, literally run our body, and for it to be slept on by science, I don't understand. Science will study serotonin and dopamine and melatonin and get it down to a T, figure out exactly what it does. And meanwhile, the most exciting one is sitting there right in front of us, might be creating our reality without us even knowing it, and they don't seem to have an interest or funding to study it, and it pierces the blood-brain barrier. That takes such effort for our body to be able to do that it's no accident. Nature doesn't do these things for fun.
And that again, we mentioned it prior about how fast it metabolizes and how you can come really right back to it.
Right.
That's a big factor, where I know a lot of people are intimidated about doing an ayahuasca session where they hear about purging, where they're going to shit and puke themselves for
That's
10
the best
hours,
part, baby.
or like even to LSD, where, well, shit, this may last 14 hours now.
Right.
For
I'm done
some
with that.
people, yeah, like that. I
Nope.
don't know, that isn't really all that appealing to me, where with DMT it just feels natural and innate and endogenous. I mean, because it is, and
Because it is, right.
it feels good. And I think that has to be a big factor in how it's researched in the future, because again, to your point, why is it made, why is it so valuable? And you said you've done it 100 plus times, I've done it hundreds of times. I can say with 100% on clarity that it will never be something that you can become addicted to. It's not something
All
that you
right.
could ever abuse. It's fucking
Oh, it won't.
terrifying every time you
I
do
tried
it.
to abuse it.
So
I tried to do it too often and for fun, and I got what they call the hyper slap.
yeah, oh yeah. So I
Well,
want to tell you about my hyper slap too.
let's
Um,
go.
but I think that for somebody that is looking for, whether it be like I said, the therapeutic help with mental health, or suicide issues, or the artistic bump, the creative bump, the architect, the scientist, the creative artist, the musician,
Yeah,
there's the ability to say, like I used to carve wood, I used to carve like big totem poles and like funky shit like that, where
that's awesome.
you could imagine, being looking at a log, thinking about, well, what am I going to turn this into? But then before you actually pick up your chainsaw to do a couple blasts of DMT, like what that would open up.
Yeah.
So I think there's huge value there where you can get a whole psychedelic therapeutic lesson in a half hour and then
Yeah.
go right back to work.
You ever
But
sing
the
after DMT? You ever do any singing or pitches or tones, chanting?
um no,
It's
I'm
it it's a whole nother thing, dude. If you have a microphone set up or whatever, I found out one day it boiled up in me. It was like a light bubble, and just and it came out. What came out of my mouth and nose was like a dial-up signal. It sounded like a dial-up signal that the internet, right? And I recorded it and I put it into a song somewhere at some point. People asked me what kind of effects I use on my voice there, and I was like, "That's DMT. I can't replicate it. I can't do it again." But it I don't know what's going on in there. But whenever I see like Tibetan throat singers, Mongolian throat singers who do these tritone things with their voice, that can be trained and figured out how to do that. But I have a distinct feeling that the origin of chanting and these hymns and these tones might be DMT, because you were saying earlier that it seems to latch onto these 3 word phrases, you know, all is love, or who am I? And it always like DMT has that language. That's when you're coming down on it, I think, and that becomes chants or tones, um, and it's singing. Oh, so I recommended it if you get a chance. Next time you're in the middle, whenever you're on that slope of coming down, open your mouth and just let it fly. And one the most common one is people will slowly raise the pitch, and everything around you will change according to whatever pitch you're in your throat. It's like the cymatics, right? You see the sand, right?
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole I'm
Right.
trying to
It's
study
like it's
because there's
doing
so much
that,
power and vibration, so much.
right?
So and the only reason I say no is because I'm talking about how comfortable I am in my own skin. That's probably like the one thing. Like I love public speaking. I have no problem getting up in front of an audience, but like singing or expressing myself in that way is just something I'm not necessarily embarrassed about. But I haven't done it
Right.
yet. But I know, like I've been since doing DMT, I've been hyper sensitive to sound, to vibration, to resonant energy fields, and to like just tapping in, and when you're vibrating in coherence or resonance with
Right.
that particular frequency. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like even with tuning forks. I'm even the Monroe Institute talking about going there. Their whole thing is sound vibrations and frequencies. And yeah, there's no doubt that there's a
Tell
lot
me
that
about
can be
that,
pulled out of
if you
that.
would. What was your visit like? Because I was recently invited to the Monroe Institute, and I'm thinking about going out there. It's 14-hour drive, but
If you have the opportunity to go, highly recommend it. It
tell me
was
about it. What happened?
so I went with the intent of um, trying to find if there were any similarities between my DMT experiences and then what I was hearing from what they were able to accomplish. So, they're talking about out of body experiences and astral projections and, clear, distinct separation from your physical body, which a lot of these things sounded similar to psychedelic experiences. So I kind of went there with that intent to compare it. And I actually did write a paper that I kind of outline about, my experiences there. But so the Monroe Institute, it's this beautiful campus in Virginia in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Amazing food, amazing coffee. So that was something if you're big into like foodie. Uh, but it's a week long of deep meditation where you're in these units that are pitch black. You have your binaural beat headphones in, and the some of it is they're pumping what they call hemisync binaural beats. So each ear has its own frequency, and my understanding is the human brain can only pick up um, frequencies of like 40 hertz or under. I guess some sensitive people maybe 20 hertz or under. But if your brain can pick up like 8 hertz or 10 hertz or 12 hertz, that elicits different responses in your body and in your physiology. And that they found that if you put like 100 in your left ear and 108 in your other ear, that your
Right.
brain will actually pick up that difference of 8, which normally would be too low for your brain to normally pick up.
Right.
And when you're fed those vibrations through your brain, it helps you get into these very distinct consciousness states. And I went there kind of, the guy raising my hand in the beginning of the class being like, are we going to know when the difference between focus 12 and focus 15? Or are we going to know when we're in focus 21? Because that's how they differentiate these consciousness levels.
Okay.
And yes, very, very clear, distinct difference of feelings when you're in focus 10 or 12 or 15 or 21. And I didn't have any out of body experiences. I didn't have like leaving of myself. I did have very deep visuals. I did have connections with like entities and beings that were way more than just like dream states or your normal like prayer sessions. But probably the biggest take home that I got away from that was that these states could also be induced naturally. Like it was like the frequencies were a good practice and they got you into that state. But
Right.
you could in essence get yourself into those states just by breathing, by meditating, by understanding what you were trying to do. And
Yeah.
again, leaving there with the power of your own body and really just how much more of a cool tool it is once you start practicing it. But a big take home from that place was I was one out of their groups are normally 25 people, or at least for their gateway process. I was not expecting the power of the group mentality and the group therapy, where we as a unit would, share our stories and debrief kind of after our sessions, but to pull in other people's power, experience, their entities, their guides. When I tell you, everybody of that group, we all shared tears, we all felt hugs, we all like it was really, really a
Wow.
powerful experience because it was
Yeah.
a shared experience of, oh, not just one person is having this sensation or whatever. Like we were all coming back with
Wow.
these really, really deep experiences and some life. I don't want to lessen the word by saying life changing or life saving, but example of a woman that whatever lost her child and hadn't been able to put it into context for 18 years is crying in front of a group saying,
Yeah.
wow, this is the first time I was able to whatever. I interacted with this energy, everything's whatever good. Or for the the 7-year-old guy that was afraid to share any of his thoughts is now standing in the middle of the room reading a
Yeah.
handwritten poem that he just wrote that was channeled to him
Right.
from someplace. And it's like,
Yes.
and
Wow.
yeah, the and maybe you could say the same thing. Like, well, these are just these guys doing drugs or doing weird shit, or that's a brain doing, hallucinating. It's I don't have the answers to say this is exactly what is happening, but the results and the benefits and the tangible changes that happen to myself and to other people when they leave these places
Right.
are really there. And then maybe to take it though to a like, oh shit, this can be practical. I did have the opportunity where Joe McGonigal, the remote viewer #1, the guy
Yeah.
that did all, like he actually was there and
No
he sh-
shit.
he shared. I got to sit with him for like 4 hours, and we had a one-on-one
His
conversation.
whole neck fit in the room with him.
It.
Wow.
But like you hear his stories, and it's easy for us to be like, oh yeah, we saw this, and this, but he's got like 40 plus years of track record of factual shit that's backed by
Yeah.
like you can't fake it, and
No,
and
when
now
he
he's
remote viewed Mars, he described Cydonia on Mars before we had photographs of it. And there's certain things that I just
well, he said that when he passes, he's got like a book that's coming out like in his will that's gonna, I guess, release all of this shit. And he said that he's got some crazy shit coming about Mars. But now like what he's doing now
oh,
is
buddy.
he's
Yeah.
using his powers and his connections to find kids that are kidnapped or are missing, and
Yes.
that's where that's his whole focus is. And again, he wouldn't be in business or he wouldn't have he's booked and booked and booked because he's finding
Yeah.
these kidnapped
That's
kids. And then,
people
like
talk about
anybody that doesn't believe it, it's like fuck
yeah.
you. He's helping lost, hurt, scared kids be found,
Dude,
and
it's
he's
a
done it
game
dozens
changer
of
when
times.
you shift it to service to others like that. So so Joe McMoneagle has a 47% success rate with remote viewing. So somebody might look at that and be like, 47%, that's less than half. Maybe it's chance or whatever. Then he finds your lost kid, you change your mind real fucking quick. you know?
Yeah, and they say he's off because he said it was a blue water tower, but it really was a blue propane tank. And it's
Right,
like, well, yeah, all right. Well, it was a blue cylindrical object, like
right.
and the people will hop on that. And
But he's
he's great to
right,
explain about. That's how he, that it's not going to be like one for one like that. That it's more, but and that there's this like time loop aspect of it where like past and future is all. Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective on it. But
right,
uh, yeah, to sit there in front of the man himself, excuse me, and to tell him, like very passionately and emotionally share his stories about what he's seen. It's
yeah.
again, and whatever his motives are, and it's maybe some of them were driven to sell books or to make money or to have a career and all like and whatever. We all
That's
have our own.
okay.
It is okay because I feel he's a genuine dude who really has dedicated his life to the service of the country and for helping
Right,
people. And again, it just shows you the power of what can happen with proper intentional belief in yourself and connection to
right.
something higher.
You
But yeah, that
know,
was a fucking experience.
there is well, a couple points. There is, people shame others for selling stuff. The biggest debunk of the telepathy tapes is that she's selling the episodes. She
Yeah.
did work. And Y Files, he's always like, there's always a book, always a book. Yeah, that's because they're allowed to write a book, and I want the book, and I'll pay for it because they did work. If someone does work, they should get paid. And
Hmm.
so I don't understand that mindset of like, oh, they're selling it, so it's a fraud. Monroe Institute charges people to have these experiences. And you know why? It's because they bought the equipment and they did the work. But that's besides the point. But whenever you're talking about sharing these emotions and opening up with these people, and sometimes it's considered woo woo or cheesy or whatever. I'll argue that by if you go to like an inner city church, and people, if you go, you can go in there as stark atheist, right? And when you're surrounded by a group of people and they all put their hands on you, you feel an electric charge, and it sparks, and it goes up your spine into the center of your head, and you can feel it light up. If you close your eyes, you can actually see light, and all it is these people touching you. People are quick to be like, oh, that's a placebo from enthusiasm. Well, first of all, what
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
placebo? And second of all, we are electrical beings. We have a torus energy field around us that's not hippie. It used to be hippie shit, but now it's a scientific measurable fact that we have an electromagnetic field around us, just like a planet. When those electromagnetic fields merge, it creates a vesica Pisces, and those energies are exchanged. That's electricity, that's plasma, that's magnetism,
And
and
that's real. Like,
it's
and it
real.
takes people like you and your last guest, Dana, and myself, and um the Monroe, like all these people. Yeah, we gotta demystify it,
Right,
and no one's coming to it being like, oh yeah, we've got all the answers, but we know clearly that the answer isn't just the basic physics that we've been taught or the basic medicine that we're being pushed down our throat. Like
right,
that definitely isn't the true story.
right. It's the mystical, the metaphysics are slowly becoming accepted science, which I know is something already everyone already knows that. But I don't think anybody really truly absorbs the implications of that. That the word pseudo science is slowly becoming future science. I mean, it's called the hard problem of consciousness for a reason.
Well, beautiful thing, another beautiful thing about DMT, and I call it the miracle molecule in my book. There's so many
Yeah,
miracles about it, but for somebody that's like a ghost hunter, I was listening to somebody talking about being a ghost hunter, and they were like, you need red eyes and a lot of coffee, and you may catch one, and if you get a bump in the night, you may whatever. Or for people that are interested in the alien or UAP phenomenon and things like that, where they man, I'd really like to see one. I'd really like to experience it. With
right.
DMT, that there's no question. Like
Uh,
if you want it to know that there's something greater than a being, or that there's sentient conscious entities that are beyond us, that are non-corporeal in form, uh, they're fucking there. And
right,
again, don't take my word for it. Do it yourself. And
right.
I think that opens up the whole realm to aliens, to ghosts, to cryptids, to the whole realm of all these other entities or beings. And
Dude, in the book of Enoch, he describes these beings that are like plasmoids of light, and they formed themselves into a way for Enoch to understand, to be able to perceive them, which became somewhat humanoid but shining. And then they led him up a mountain. Whether the mountain was a metaphor for the spine or Kundalini or whatever, I don't know. But they led him up a mountain where he saw the reservoir of this plasmoid, where he says it was creating stars and creating planets. He said, "Oh my goodness, this is the place where reality itself is produced and put out." And these beings are watching this world from this, I guess, this other side, this barrier. And without knowing that, you can do DMT, and these beings will pluck you out of your reality and then show you your reality from inside of their spaceship, or from inside of their whatever it is that they're looking. And you realize that, oh my God, these beings are right here. They're right here. But they are looking into our realm from a spatial dimension, a fifth spatial dimension that we cannot perceive with our biological senses. And it's incredible to see science studying this miracle molecule and how it does exactly that, and then tying it all the way back to the book of Enoch, which is frankly describing exactly the same thing. This has been with us forever.
And finally people are having the balls to talk about it, whether it be stories like myself that is sharing, but more importantly, or as importantly, that like Imperial College out in London, that they're doing a lot of work with the DMT extended state. I mentioned Andrew Gallimore. He's associated with this company called, I believe, Nuanotics, where they're doing, like, they're setting up this Caribbean island where I guess they're able to do psychedelics and stuff like that. Where and then you have the Strassmans and the Joe Dispenzas and these qualified medical professionals that are talking about this, where I'd like to think that there's a shift, that there is a consciousness shift happening, that there's a saturation of data points that'll happen where it can't be denied. And I'd like to think that we're at that point where once some of the stuffy kind of old white gray bearded men, I hate to say it, kind of get out of the way,
right,
and stop preventing real science and research from happening, stop preventing consciousness exploration from really being at the forefront. I really do have hope that the younger generations and the younger, I've got two nieces that are 21 and 15. I seem to be talking to a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, and I feel that they're having this conscious awakening, or this realization that there's a better way, that it's not about conflict and divisiveness and nastiness, that it is more about love and connection and understanding. And I'm hoping that that consciousness will change, or the, how do I want to word it? And we talk about like the next step of human evolution, or the next progressive step of where we're going to go. We clearly, as the human species right now, that we're not in our optimal use of ourselves, our energy, the planet's resources, any of those things, and we're on a self-destructive, shitty path. And I think
there's an anthropological shift happening, and it's not only palpable, but the Hindu Yuga cycle illustrates it. We're on our way up, by the way, which is good news, and I can kind of sense it.
Yeah, there is an energetic shift that's happening, and I don't know if we're all going to collectively, as this big massive group, go up, or I say kind of jokingly, but maybe honestly, like, maybe there's a speciation event happening too, where maybe like the dumbed down fucking idiots that are just all about money and clout and selfish things, whatever, they'll stay Homo sapiens, but there'll be another level of more conscious thinkers that will rise above it, that will be more based on empathy, sympathy, love, connection.
Bro, you're describing the rapture.
It's fun, but and So now
right?
put this into perspective as I go talk to my mom now after this interview, where it's like, how do we talk about the rapture, Armageddon, this kind of big coming where and say it with a straight face like it's actually happening, but it is, and I feel as though there are a lot of people sensing it, and overall I think it's going to be a positive shift and transformation because it's one of love, one of connection, one that
Yeah,
feels good, one that brings people together, and one that shows the best in humanity, and not the worst that's been on display for so long in so many aspects of mass media, social media,
right.
just shit, and
Well,
there are
you'll
enough people that
notice, dude. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but you give me a lot of ideas just in the middle of what you're saying.
that's good.
But and if you read history, you'll notice that we focus on the bad stuff, the wars, the poverties, the Great Depressions. We never write down and remember the periods of peace. I don't know why.
Well,
Maybe
this will be the, and you know, whether we call it the psychedelic revolution or the consciousness, whatever upgrade or whatever, something, and that there's a lot of different perspectives too, where it's not just the guys doing shrooms coming down from the mountaintops or the whatever the hippy dippy guys that are having a spiritual whatever rebirth. It's hardcore scientists and
right,
doctors too, being like, hey, this is a value, this is a benefit,
right,
and a lot of it too is because you ask anybody, you know, how close have you been to somebody that had a real mental health issue that was suicidal, or even God forbid lost somebody to suicide or a mental health issue,
right.
and it's typically in your immediate family or somebody
Yeah,
very very close to you, and so you know when you put a personal face to it, it becomes a real conversation, and you know like somebody like my mother, I don't think she'll ever do DMT. Not necessarily do I want her to, or is she going to look to for psychedelics to you know cure her issues? But now through seeing my transformation and what I've been through, she's now an advocate for DMT and for the therapeutic value and benefit. And it's you know I think as more and more stories like this get shared, it can keep expanding out and opening the circles to where
right.
maybe to remove some of the stigma, some of the taboo, some of the like, oh no, you can't go near DMT, that'll fry your brain. It's like, oh, no,
I
let's not
like
have
your
that conversation
analogy
anymore.
in the book about yeah, it's gonna fry your brain because you don't want raw dough.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not going to go back to it. So yeah, so will you fully cook your brain? Yes, and that's the point is because it's uncooked, doughy, sloppy mess of a brain before it wasn't fully
Right,
done. Like you don't want that.
right.
And you,
Michael Pollan, dude, is one of the serious scientists, by the way, for anybody wondering about the therapeutic parts. I guess the less sensational parts of psychedelics is this is a no nonsense science. And also, like, shout out to Rupert Sheldrake, who is an old OG scientist who actually does the science. He's not just a mouthpiece. He's doing the experiments and stuff. And we need more guys like that. And I guess that takes balls.
yeah, well, you get comfortable in your own skin and you stop giving a fuck what your peers think about you, and you realize that you know you've got one shot at this world and leave your input on it how you want. And I I'm very happy to be part of this time, this era, this kind of movement of just individual thinkers. And doesn't mean that we all got it right or that we got all the answers, but it's just to know that don't just accept the force-fed narrative that you've been. And you know, that's why I love your show and I love what you put out there because and again, you're not acting like, oh, I've got it all figured out and what I'm presenting is 100% truth or fact, or it's no, it's just
Right.
listen, here's the evidence, here's the history, absorb it how you may, and then come up with your own idea of it or your own take of it, not
Right.
just because you said so or I said so. And uh,
We all have a different piece of the puzzle,
yeah,
and I like collecting those pieces of the puzzle, and also embracing being wrong about things is a beautiful and magical thing. I always say, remember your what ifs whenever you're hypothesizing. Make it clear that you are speculating. Kind of keeps you out of trouble. But that's not what's important. What's important is to be able to speculate. There are so many scientists who write deep in their book. It'll be like chapter 19 in the middle of the chapter somewhere. They'll be like, I would love to speculate more, but Neil deGrasse Tyson will openly mock me in public, and his mocking will get more views than my speculation will. Thus, will become a lopsided issue to where I'm known for that because he mocked me for it. Rupert Sheldrake is one of those men who is very aggravated by the fact that he's a brilliant scientist who does the science. But if he puts his results out there with the speculation of something higher, a scientist who is a mouthpiece who doesn't do the science, to be clear, doesn't do anything but talk on talk shows, will mock him for it. And for whatever reason, get more attention brought to him about it. And I can feel that frustration. Because we can't move forward that way.
No, but hopefully there is a shift where people call bullshit. And I think that bullshit filter, especially with him, and not that I know him personally, but it'd be like, buddy, like it doesn't, you're not passing the stink test. Like it's
Right.
just, you fucking like bullshit. And that's where the beauty of having the clarity of going through DMT and everything like that. Like I would love the ability to have conversations like that with somebody like him, where it's just, no, you're not going to sway me with your clout, your power, your your science journals, none of that fucking shit. Where it's like,
Right.
no, man to man, like you pull on your pants just like you do, like whatever, or even whatever. Let's pull our pants down and we'll sit here fucking butt naked and see that, But I think there is enough loud voices that are challenging that ingrained perspective, and
Right.
that, like I'd like to think that certainly within your audience or my group of people, the people that are interested in Rupert Sheldrake and what he's done for, like the concept of like epigenetics and then the importance of the environment and connection to source and all of what he's put out there, that they're going to turn to him as a resource or somebody to look to, not the DeGrasse Tysons, who are clearly a paid mouthpiece for whoever.
Right.
And good for him. And that's not calling him bad or evil or what the fuck. It's just you're
I
very
will.
transparent in what you're doing. So
Right.
don't act like you're not transparent. It's like, don't act like you don't have shit smeared on your face. You clearly have shit smeared on your face.
Right.
Where the other people that are approaching it from an honest, standpoint, and there's several of them out there, like Bruce Lipton's another one that's talking about this type of stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
Greg Braden, and I don't know, some of these names are just, they're but they do have some valid points where it's another perspective of what it means to be human, and it's, again, it doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but there's another narrative than just pharmaceutical pills, drown it with
Right.
alcohol, go to work for 70 hours a week, money, material bullshit. Like,
Right.
that's not what our human experience is. It's way closer to the ancient mysteries of the past, where you're walking into the cave for 7 days and you're fasting and you're, drinking some fermented barley. Like that's
Right.
closer to the truth.
So I think Plato's cave allegory is timeless because, in this, I guess in this channel community, we call it the black cube, which is what she just described as go to work and pay your bills and go home, make a baby, and then die. And to find out that there's so much more than that is not only cliche, but it's jarring because we're born into the black cube. So it seems like, because we're surrounded by it, it morphs our consciousness. So it takes a certain amount of skill to be able to realize, and the phrase "think outside the box." There's a reason it's called exactly that. But when you first peek your head up outside of that box, that black cube, you get option paralysis. You get that bright searing light and the sounds. It's a whole nother world all of a sudden, and you might be frightened enough to be a gopher and disappear back into that where you came from, where it's comfortable again. But if you can withstand that pressure, that fear, and that risk, it's a beautiful thing, and that sacrifice is real too. Like my money is up and down with YouTube. It's a real source of anxiety, and I'll admit that. When I work in construction, I get a check every week, whether or not I fail or do good job. I get a check because I showed up on time or whatever. With YouTube, if I have a video that doesn't do so well, I'm gonna be fucking cutting it close on the bills, and I don't know for sure that the next video is going to go viral. And if it doesn't, I'm not going to pay the bills. So there's
Do you want me to show my nipple right now or something, so you can get some good eyes?
try to like show a little bit of skin here, like maybe this won't go viral. I think they
Shit.
would pay at that point not to.
Yeah,
So
probably.
I mean, everyone
Some
donate
pasty old white
$5 to
guy.
see my nipple, donate $10 to Kachi.
Fuck.
But no, so it's fear. And I fall for that. That's where those breathing exercises come in. So like it's a mild, that's where like so I haven't done DMT in a while. I did once very recently, but it was the first time in 2 years since I've done it. But if I'm in that
A
fear,
lot's changed in your life since then, huh?
well, I did DMT every week for like 2 years. And then I got kicked out a few times by some angry entities. And then I went through a divorce and looking for answers for my what's going to inevitably be a completely different life, because that's what divorce does. I did DMT and I had one of the worst nightmarish experiences of my entire life. It was so awful that I cannot think of anything close to ever have been that bad that could happen to a person. I didn't realize how bad panic and fear could be until that 10 minutes of my life.
Really?
It was the worst thing I've ever experienced. So I didn't do it ever since then. So that's why I asked you earlier about set and setting. How, because if you have this sense of I need to change, well, okay, yeah, psychedelics might give you a way to look at that more clearly, but don't do it while you're in that fear state, or else it'll exacerbate it. But the breathing exercises is a mild way to get a taste of that. So when that fear sets in and I'm like, okay, I'm scared and I want to go back to a safe zone, 9 to 5, where I know I can pay my bills, but I'm dead inside. I don't mean that sounds extreme, but I don't mean
I'm in the
that
same.
inside.
Yeah, I'm in the same thing right now, where it's like,
But I won't be able to do the things right that I want to do. And then you do the breathing exercises, and then you sit in silence for an hour or whatever. You get an idea. Boom, that idea comes through. You put the idea, you execute it, and all of a sudden, that's a new angle that you didn't even realize was there before. We have so many options to do whatever we want, but we can't see them because we block them from ourselves with a brick wall of fear. And fear is effective. That's why they use it. That's what the news is for. That's how they keep us constrained to the black cube. But yeah, moderation, I think, would be key in that aspect when it comes to hallucinogens and that. I mean,
and just to briefly tell you my kind of kick out story
please.
about using with psychedelics with the intent to get an answer out of it. I started, this is maybe now 100 uses into it. I'd already had the book published. I'm going on podcasts. I'm kind of like becoming like the DMT guy. And I always had, like I said, respect, reverence. I have a good 15, 20-minute routine every time I smoke that I kind of go into.
Yeah.
Well, this time I kind of went in with some cockiness and some arrogance. Like, listen, I'm demanding some answers. Like, I want to know some back of the house shit. Like, I want to know some deep, like, whatever, who built the pyramids? What is the like, really, like, fuck it. Like, some of the questions that you're proposing on your show, like, all right, listen, I know this is where the information is going to be. I want it. And like I say, kind of had a cockiness or an arrogance. Like, I was almost, like I was entitled to it. And, very weird things happen where I didn't have any negative or bad interactions, but I just was not let into the space at all. So, you talk about how you typically take 1 or 2 hits and you instantly get all of the hum and whatever. I took, 3, 4 big hits and like nothing, like really just like there was
Wow.
I couldn't get into that space. It was just like really no interaction. So I kind of came back. I was like, oh, what the fuck? That's weird. Did it again,
Wow.
maybe like a week later, same thing. And now most of the times I do it with my girlfriend. And, we have this like routine where it's a very, very straightforward thing. And I was smoking a good amount, like not pussyfooting it around. Like, I mean, packing the bowl and fucking ripping it. And I
I
really,
didn't even know that was possible, bro.
there was like 3 times that I smoked where I didn't get the vibratory hum. I didn't get the taste. I didn't get the sensations. I didn't get any entities. I didn't get anything. And it was just kind of like this dud experience where it's like, wow, this shouldn't be. And then I kind of realized like, fuck, you know, I was going in there with a little bit of cockiness or arrogance. And I kind
Wow.
of I said, I'm sorry. You know, I did my apologies. And then the next session, you know, I kind of went in with, please let me back in, like, let me back into the group, let me back into the club type deal. And I remember that first hit, I looked at my girlfriend and I smiled. I was like, oh, I'm back. They're letting me back in, because that first hit again, now you're feeling the sensations, the buzz, the hum. But there
Yeah.
was a period where I kind of was like, my DMT card got pulled because I was too cocky or too arrogant. Like I demanded and was entitled information, and uh, clearly not going to happen. Like, there, as much as you can, you know, try to set the intention, try to set the mood, certainly have an idea of where you want to take it. But
Right.
ultimately they are, you know, they're going to have the upper hand, and typically have the controlling force or power.
I'll tell you what, it might be cliche, but that's the luckiest a man can be in the world, that you got a woman that supports the usage of such an extreme psychedelic. Not that I mean, I think so. My ex-wife is a little bit more knowledgeable than she used to be concerning it. But whenever I first started doing it, it was alien to her. She'd never heard of it or before. And so seeing me within the state that it induces was frightening to her. And she was like, not, you know, then I would draw pictures like this. And it was like, no, get the fuck out of here, you know? So when it finally started working, and you look over at her, and it's like, okay, I got it now. And is she like sitting with you, or like, do you guys do it together? Do you meet up in the other realm?
So yeah, no, we do it together. We use it as part of our intimate kind of sexual routine, where we microdose it, and really we kind of explore each other sexually with it. I would
Holy
say
shit.
the and yeah, we can kind of get into that process. But the normal routine is one of us decides to hold space for the other person, and you know, typically only one of us will do it. Where um, yeah, we'll be there to take the pipe, to put it down, to make sure everything is safe. And then we really enjoy, like, when I go deep into that space, you know, she'll kind of spoon me, and hug me and hold me, and feel the vibration go through you, because like I said, you viscerally do physically vibrate and shake. And
Yeah,
she kind of like holds on for the ride, and
right.
really kind of feels as though she gets a translation of information through me by just resonating with my energy. Um,
That was one of the big
yeah.
ones for my ex, that this little shaking right here or whatever is like it's in fast flow. It's like
Oh
it's
yeah,
almost
yeah.
like
My
a
leg does that. It's like it's fucking
yeah.
coming off.
And my hands were vibrating so fast that you couldn't see the motion. It just looked like a and that was very freaky. And unless you're in the body of the person doing it, it doesn't make any sense. It's almost looks like a seizure. No matter how calm your face is, it looks weird. But yeah,
So she's comfortable in the DMT space and has done it, you know, a shitload of times too. So that it was something where she, you know, as much as my physical body probably went off into a different place and looked maybe not all that pleasant, you know, she knew kind of where I was and what I was at.
yeah.
But
So when you cross over, can you meet up with a person over there, or do you think that's more of a
I've never done that before. Like, I've never had a sync up where, like, me and a buddy, we're going to time it and we'll see if we can get to the same spot. There is research going on, um, where they're trying to compare that. I think Zeus Zapato is one of the guys that are working on that. Um, yeah, where
fascinating?
they're trying to see if like a common entity or person can be experienced at the same time.
See, there was these two scientist guys who I don't fucking remember their names, but anthropologists, and they went to do ayahuasca to research the culture. And so they did the ayahuasca together, and these beings came walking out of the woods and the forest, the jungle, and showed these two anthropologists the origin of Earth, how the Earth was made, and they're spectacular, amazing, blah blah blah. The next day, they started comparing notes, and they're like, "Yeah, that was crazy when the beings came out of the." And then they stopped. They're like looking at each other. Wait a second. We saw the same thing. And like, yeah. and that's when they like the mystic, the shaman or whatever is like, yeah, of course you saw the same thing. They came and talked to all of us. Both of them, anthropologists were like, okay, this isn't a hallucination. This is a gateway. We just opened up space for these beings to come look, because they drew and described the same beings.
Yeah, that's why there's so much research that can be done on this, and I think we're really just scratching the tip of the surface
sure.
here. Yeah, I'm excited, and that's where and I've reached out to a lot of these research facilities where I've kind of said, listen, I'll donate my brain and body to science, where like, I know that my vessel can contain DMT, and I wanna explore where it can go.
Is there a way to do that for us to volunteer to become test subjects for like Strassman?
Yeah, and not to necessarily shit on it, because again, everything does have a cost. But I just got an email the other day where you have to fill out an application, but I think it was like $8,000 or something like that for like a week, and then you got the thing. But there was some scholarships where it could get down to like 2,500 but
Damn.
there is some pay to play type stuff. But I'd like
See,
to think that over
the
time
ones that aren't fun, they pay you.
But like to your point about how much have I done experimenting like outside of just myself in my bedroom, and the answer is not as much as I'd like to, because this is where I feel safe. But like
Right.
mentioning that laser experiment, how great would that be to get a bunch of people where we can go and do that and share it? Or I actually when I went to the Monroe Institute, one of the people in my group was the CEO. She was actually there spending like the whole week doing the coursework to kind of like revamp her understanding of it. But her and I became friends, and we were talking about just how psychedelics is similar to these altered states, that are induced by the hemisync technology. And is there something in and I want to state actually right off the jump, they say that they're not, there's no alcohol or drugs on campus. They really
Right.
want you to have a clean state of mind when you're going through this. That being said, she was open to the idea of that there is something to be studied about the commonalities of psychedelic states and binaural beats and these altered states of consciousness, where
Yeah.
maybe there is some way to get a psychedelic experience by simply listening to binaural beats, where
Right.
you don't have to ingest a chemical, but you can maybe get into DMT space if you're at a certain amount of frequency or level, because we keep saying how it's vibration, it's sound, it's tuning your antenna, it's enriching your ability to receive information. And
Right.
I think there's multiple ways of doing that. And and maybe it could be even something simple as you listen to the right frequency and it just really gets your own
Oh,
endogenous DMT
dude.
jacked up super high.
The frequency that is 963 might be 936, but it's the pineal gland has a particular like vibration frequency or whatever. Don't just listen to it. If you find 963 hertz on a YouTube or whatever,
Is that one of those Solfeggio frequencies?
right,
Right?
right.
Yeah.
But also do the pitch with your throat. Just and you can feel the vibration in your jaw. And it slowly goes up, dude. You can be stone cold sober, not even breathing exercises, dude. Just sit there and make sure you're matching the pitch of the 963 on the YouTube. Just and you'll start tripping out.
I
You're
believe you.
dude. It's a slow melting. So you hit a big breath in, right? Just and then just slow holding on, and just kind of like exhale it or whatever. You run out of breath, take a small pause, breathe back in, and sing the tone. You're generating that tone from within. Dude, it is quadruple as effective as just listening to the tones. Because the reason those tones are working on you, especially the pineal frequency 963, is because it's vibrating. The sound has to go into your body, into your skull, and then vibrate your cerebral spinal fluid into the pineal gland, which does work. These monks have been doing it. 111 hertz is another big one that they used to do in Malta and all these Stonehenge, all these ancient sites. but it doesn't. Just don't listen to it. You can sing that pitch and it'll vibrate from within. It happens way more rapidly. People seem to sleep on how endogenous this is, because it's not just the chemical endogenous that can make us have these downloads and insights. We can do them manually with certain yogic poses. There's, like, for example, not just singing that tone 963, but people think that zazen posture is a matter of tradition. Has nothing to do with tradition. We're electrical. So that the heat of the fireplace, like the bottom of the chimney or the Christmas tree, however metaphor it is at our sacrum. And we want a direct line to our pineal gland without, because if we're leaning back, you got a curve. That electricity has to take that course. If your back is completely straight and your head tilted down, it's like a fucking cerebral cocktail highway between your dick muscles, wherever the testicles, wherever that heat's coming from, directly up to the pineal gland. If you're completely straight and you hum 963 the best you can, you're not going to be disappointed. But within a time span of about 5 to 10 minutes, it will replace an 5-hour years of meditation.
And think about what a better
Quickly.
bump that is at the end of the day than going to the bar or to do. And again, I'm not shitting on. Be
Right.
careful. Like, alcohol isn't the issue. People that drink aren't whatever. Like, it's if you abuse it and if you're using that, like the way I was. But if imagine if we could do that in a group setting. Imagine,
Right.
a bunch of powerful guys or women sitting in a room doing this, and that's where there is sound vibration baths ceremonies popping up. Like, I'm in Rhode Island, so I'm kind of close to Boston and Providence. There's a lot of cool shit that's happening where these methodologies are coming.
Right.
There are churches holding sound bowl vibration sessions and stuff, and
in a group setting would be even more effective. Like we were talking about earlier about the inner city churches, when people put their hands on you, that electricity, it ignites. So having people nearby, your electromagnetic field is going to form a vesica piscis with theirs, vesica piscis, I guess. I don't know, people correct me on all that time. But whenever you overlap those energies, it's contagious. So when one person who's tapped in, they have their foot in the door, starts feeling it, morphic resonance, just like Rupert Sheldrake says, passes it on to the next person. People hold hands when they pray, and they think that's tradition. No, that's electricity, dude. Magnets,
But
that's
this is exactly what you, I, and sounds like your guests and listeners are sharing, studying, researching, and using in our day-to-day lives. And maybe my parents listening to a conversation like this would maybe brush some of it off as like, oh wow, they're talking about some out there shit. I guarantee you the younger generation or the people that have experienced some of what we've been through, this is kind of becoming a more normal conversation. And because it's more practical, it makes us have a better quality of life as a human and a more enriching experience. And I'm excited to see where this is all going to go. I mean, up until a couple of years ago, I was still in the rat race trying to make money, and this whole lifestyle and everything is new to me. I'm really excited to see where myself, but where humanity is going to be in 5, 10, 20 years from now, when my voice, your voice, and people that are sharing similar messages are getting the airtime.
I'm optimistic, dude. I don't watch the news. I see memes, so I kind of know what's going on out there. But I've noticed that I see beautiful things in the world so much more when I don't watch the news.
And think about just what you and I created right here. Like your personal story that led you to this podcast, to name it this, to have the success that you've had, the amazing following, for me to go through with the book to write. It's like, 5 years ago, you and I, whatever, we probably would have either been miserable fucks, met at a bar and done whatever, where it's like, well, no, now we're meeting up with the intent of talking about mental health, helping people, sharing insight, being there as a resource. And what the fuck, man, if we're two funny looking guys that have the balls to step out of our normal day-to-day jobs to try to shed the message, one small piece of the puzzle, one small message, but there's a lot of people doing it. And I'm happy and honored to be part of your show and part of sharing your message. And
Right. We
thanks
play
for
our
doing it, man.
yeah, we play our small part in something big. And dude, you ever think about how close we were to being that grizzled old man at the end of the bar,
Oh,
just smoking cigarettes and just watching a silent football game and just being like,
Well, and even
uh,
like now, talk about how lucky I am to be with that woman that I'm with, and I've been with her now for coming on 3 years, and like, so to be that old grizzled nasty guy who's miserable, who doesn't get laid, who doesn't have fun, that isn't in shape, that doesn't have good friends, like all of those types of things. Where fuck that. Like if you're in a loveless marriage or relationship where you're not getting laid, you're not having fun, you're not laughing, get the fuck out of it,
get
because there's a
out.
million people that will love you just for who you are and think you're absolutely amazing. If your boss is an asshole and a dick and doesn't appreciate your time and energy and effort, like, the two jobs that I have now as side jobs, I'm not making great money. But the owners of these companies, man, they every day I get appreciation, handshakes, thank you, the extra perks, bonuses. Um, that's what I'm looking for.
Right.
Um, the woman that I'm with, she is my biggest supporter, my biggest rock. Our sex life is amazing. Our social life is amazing. We never fight. We
Any
never.
woman who will
And
have
like,
sex on with DMT is on another level of a partner, dude. That's amazing.
she's awesome. But it sounds corny to say it, but I I was such a miserable prick with all those other women because I didn't know myself, I didn't love myself, and I was treating myself so horribly. Where
Right.
now, when if we go to New Hampshire for the weekend or something, and yeah, we're getting coffee, we're having ice cream, we're hiking the mountains, we're smoking good weed, we're making love. It's like there's every aspect of this we're enjoying, and it's such an awesome thing to be a human. Where before it was thinking about work, tied up. I've got to
Yeah.
convince this one to fuck me. Like just this whole range of shit where once you
Yeah.
can get all that clutter away and just truly, again, be here, be now, be content exactly where you currently are, and to be like, oh, how fucking lucky am I
Right.
to be me right now? And um, yeah, so it just a better way of living, better way of presenting yourself, interacting with others, and I
I,
hope we can keep sharing our message and our smile, because it's way better than the sunken eyes, miserable, loud, drunken asshole that.
yeah.
Ugh,
Dude,
yeah.
and it happens to the best of us. There's some of the most brilliant people with the most brilliant potential who end up being that guy at the end of the bar, dude. And the reason they end up being that guy is because whenever shit goes south for them, they forget how incredible it is that if we turn a knob, water comes out. And if we want food, we go to a grocery store where it's all on display. And what they focus on, oh, the eggs are expensive now. Bitch, you don't have to hunt for those anymore.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's
and become
fucking
homeless and live
miracle.
on the streets, and not like, But I talk about taking shit for granted, where it's like, yeah, no, realize how fucking lucky you have it. Like most
Right,
people's, worst day is a large majority of this world's population's best day.
right,
Like, yeah,
right.
and
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 social media is doing that to a lot of people too. I've talked to a couple people who I'm like, how do you live that life? How do you travel? How do you seem to blah blah blah? Because I'm looking at their page or whatever, and they're like, Joe, I'm fucking boring, dude. Like all the shit that you saw on my Facebook was a span of like 3 years, and I did like fucking three cool things. And then you look at it more objectively, you're like, okay, no, I see what's going on. Whenever you look at someone's life on social media, you tend to assume that you're all cooped up because you compare. I mean, that's kind of obvious, the stereotype, the social dilemma of social media, but people tend to post about the most exciting things, and that's what they're supposed to do. But it makes the viewer feel like they have that fear of missing out or whatever, when really it should be an inspiration to get out and do the most mundane thing, like go for a hike in the woods on a trail somewhere and just look at trees. And
yeah,
yeah, it's
that's it. It's nirvana. That's bliss. That's it.
dude,
That's fucking it.
I I went for a run the other day, and so I can't smoke weed because it gives me anxiety. But what I will do is I'll have like a half of a baddie or something like that, and then I'll get out in the sunlight, and I'll call it like a sun run. This is what I do, And I remember I was running and I was looking at the ground while I ran, and I was ruminating in my head loops of thoughts. What am I going to do next? When's this going to come out? When do I have to write this? When do I? And I, while running, the weed kind of kicked in or whatever. I looked up and I saw a tree, and I saw the tree. And this is where it gets kind of hard to describe, but I realized I was like, I don't ever see trees.
Mhm.
They're so abundant.
Yeah.
I don't notice them.
Stop, hug it, touch it, feel it, smell it. Yeah. It's
Right.
beautiful. And you know what? And I do hug trees. Like I literally go and hug trees. And it's like I'm sure people will drive by and look at me and be like, oh, look at this guy. He's fucking lost his marbles.
Right.
No, man, I have my marbles because
We're
I'm
programmed to
appreciating
think
that
it's
tree.
weird.
Yeah, no, but the little kid is who's hugging that. The the special needs person who's really connected is hugging the tree. The older person who has, end of life and knows that, oh fuck, this may be one of my last trees. They realize how great it is. But
Dude.
that's that's the take home message, that now at 44 years old, hopefully I have enough, and a healthy enough life ahead of me where there's not going to be a second that goes by that I don't take every, in good or bad, and even when there's challenging situations, what can I learn from it? Why am I going through this stress? How can I use it to better myself? Or, but yeah, to appreciate truly every moment that we have, because it's going to be gone in a blink of an eye.
Right.
Everybody knows that. So
Yeah. A side note on that tree hugging is that, yeah, we're programmed to think things are weird, but not to get too sciencey again, but electromagnetic energy, dude. I mean, it runs the universe and creates our reality. And we know we have that Taurus, dude. If you look at a tree, dude, a tree literally is
Yeah.
a Taurus. That's quite literally what it is. When you hug a tree, yeah, you might be seen from somebody that it looks like something hippy dippy or whatever, but you are getting a tsunami of electrons into your damn whatever it is, the bioplasma. I forget some of the technical terms, but it charges you. If you let your cat out to go run around in the grass, the cat comes back in and you pet it while it's purring, you are getting a tsunami of electrons, and it charges your soul. And I mean soul like, bioplasma. But it's so strange how, if you go to India, these things that are normal for us is almost like we consider them weird. Not just hugging trees, but have you ever looked at the Kundalini yoga of the Kriya that they do, where it's bizarre? They put their eyes, they cross their eyes, and they look up, and then they stick their tongue out and they pants like a dog while doing a thumbs up, and it looks silly. And we're like, I don't want to look silly. That's my main goal in my life and my body, is to not look silly. Meanwhile, these dudes looking silly are supercharging the cerebral spinal fluid and just getting divine downloads in silence while people look at them weird. They're having the best idea they've ever had.
instead of scrolling through smut on Instagram for an hour like most people do and be like, oh yeah, an hour just passed. No,
dude,
do some dragon breathing and you'll be much better way to spend an hour.
The dragon breathing. Yeah. I like that better than breath of fire. But yeah, and it'll suck you in. I put my phone away whenever I want to do work, whether I'm writing or editing. I put my phone on the charger so that, because I get anxiety when it buzzes. But here's what's crazy is, if I need to get that piece of footage, and he sent it to me on the email, I'll go to my phone and I'll get the email. 5 minutes later, I'll find myself on Facebook scrolling, and I don't know how I got there.
Yeah, I know. Me too. And I get up early in the morning, so I get up at like 3:34, and sometimes I'll like look and it's like, fuck, I just wasted. Like, what could I have done instead of just done shit for a while? And I'm trying to be conscious of it, but
Right.
it's
Well, it catches you unconsciously, dude.
well, and now like you get caught up in it. Like, well, did this post do good, or does this, like, did this take off? And yeah, you can kind of get into that whole mix too. But
And that's an Achilles heel of mine as well. I've noticed whenever I ignore the algorithm and do whatever is good for my heart, it does well. And whenever I'm concerned about how something's going to be received, it doesn't do well. What an ironic kick in the ass that is. But yeah, I
Well, I
find
don't know how the
myself,
algorithm works for 3-hour videos. Maybe we need to cut it off so that way people watch to the end and you get the full engagement.
yeah,
Oh,
it's one of the I've been putting out those compilation videos of like several
fucking love
tied
that, man.
together, and it people I never
Yeah.
would have thought of doing that until people asked for them, and I was like, oh shit, maybe it's not crazy to do. I
Oh,
even, by the
you
way,
made a good point though. Like you put out a lot of quality content before you got as popular as you are, and a lot of people haven't. You've got a lot of good content that doesn't have
right,
that many eyes on it. So I think what you're doing as far as bringing them back in compilations are helpful because the content's there, it's already created, and it's valuable and good. I mean, what the fuck? It's quality content. So
right, and people like it all in a row, so they don't have to look for certain
yeah,
videos. But speaking of which, I was thinking about doing this, and I mean, I'll let you go soon, but just to put
I
an
gotta take a
idea in
piss.
your head. Right. Have you thought about narrating your own book and putting it on YouTube? Because
I'm doing it now. I already have. So,
yeah,
like again, all this shit is new to me. Where a couple years ago, I was a guy that had no social media input. I wanted no one anything to know what my life is. Where now, yeah, this all started. So I just started a YouTube channel a few weeks ago. I think I have 70 subscribers now.
hell
Fucking
yeah.
getting up there. But I'm doing each chapter of my book. I'm doing a short video. So I actually just posted chapter 3 yesterday.
Okay.
I did a short video about the DMT laser experiment. I'm gonna do a short video about the Monroe Institute and kind of my experiences with that. So I am like all this is new to me. I have no idea how it's all going to pan out, but I just started a YouTube. I just started a Patreon channel. Like I said, I'm more than halfway done my next book, so that'll be coming out soon. And
Quick heads up, man. Any money you make, take out 25% for taxes and don't make the same mistake I did. Just that's the
oh
only tip
fuck
I
off,
have for you.
I've lived that life quite a bit. So I always 1099. So I never paid taxes, and all that money I ever made, I just at the end of the year I would pay in one chunk. So I've got before the 30, 40, $50,000 tax chunks before. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
fun. But
Oh God.
again, to put it in perspective, like I used to bitch, oh, I can't believe I'm paying 40 grand in taxes. I didn't make 40 grand last year. It's like, so
Right.
instead of, I wish I was in the position to be like, oh, fuck, I made too much money. Look how I had to pay. It's like, no, man,
Right. That's
fucking,
that's
because
where I
40,
was
yeah.
bitching is I I'm literally staring at this tax guy. He's an advisor, and I'm like, you mean to tell me if I punch in and punch out, they take out 7%, but if I start my own business, they take 20 to 25%? I was like, the government is doing that deliberately to make us not able to do our own shit. And he was like, yeah, that's life. And I'm like, I don't think it is. I don't think that is life. But then a shift of perspective, I have to remember how lucky I am to get the opportunity to get fucked on taxes like that.
Right. Yeah. To have some passive revenue, we have not passive. It's obviously labor intensive, but to
But
have
right, but
content, revenue coming in. Yeah. No, we're blessed. But
very
that
much
doesn't, with all this, it doesn't mean that life is easy. That you're not going to get kicks in the dick. That you're not going to get parking tickets and taxes and all that. You're going to have
right,
all of those things. But it's the perspective you approach it with. It's what energy you leave the room with.
right,
And how engaging of a human do you want to be? And
right,
we are in control of that. And it's a beautiful experience when you take control of it. It's fucking awesome. Like I'm really happy to be alive and to like to not know necessarily where my path is going to go, but to know that if I do it with integrity, if I do it with character, if I do it with an authentic desire to know myself, to love myself, to spread that, like how can my life not be awesome? Now,
right,
maybe I'll make 30 grand next year. Maybe I'll make 230 grand next year, but that's not going to be contingent on my happiness.
right.
So the fact that I know that, I already know that the next year is going to be awesome. And because
Good.
I can say that I have, and maybe a good way to end the podcast is and how I ended my book with the chapter, Love Thy Neighbor. I can say all those things because I have an amazing support staff of both my mom and dad are amazing. I have an awesome sister who's married to one of my best friends. I have an amazing girlfriend. I have a core group of inner friends that would literally take a bullet for me and have given me food, shelter, and money. I've gotten handshakes of thousands of dollars before from friends just saying, yeah, here you go. So I know that I'll get through it because I'm loved by other people and I'm part of this greater source. And to know though that if you're in the position to be that for other people, because you never know when you're going to be that shoulder that needs leaning on or to lean on. And
Right.
yeah, so I can say that statement because of the love and graciousness that I'm surrounded in. But I also try to project that and pay that forward. And yeah,
There's an important point to be made there, and I think the lesson is, for those of you listening whose knee-jerk reaction to that might be, oh, that's lucky, I don't have people in my life who are ride or die like that. That means it's your turn to be that person.
Call me,
And
call you. Yeah, fuck it, I'll be
right,
here for you. You can lean on my shoulder.
right. And if you don't have those people, that means
Yeah.
that you might be the oak tree. And as you said, I mean, Adam will take your email. And speaking of which, Drew says, what is your channel called? Your YouTube channel?
Butler's DMT Field Guide.
Perfect. All right. I'll make sure I put that right in the description. Is the link to your book, but send me whatever. I didn't know you had your own.
So if
channel.
you go on I'd say of all the social media, I'm most active on Instagram. So on my Instagram account, and it's Books by Adam Butler. There's a link there for the Amazon. There's a link for the Patreon, and there's a link for the YouTube. Like I said, I just put it up a couple of weeks ago, but it's short videos like this, just kind of trying to present the message out there. But yeah, no, I appreciate the support.
How did you avoid becoming a butler? I mean, that was pretty close call there. I mean,
that may be the perfect job though. Can you imagine that? Be a butler for some rich old cougar and just get paid to fucking whatever.
DMT
make her ayahuasca. Yeah.
Oh, that would be amazing. All right, man. Well, I'll tell you what, this has been a wonderful conversation. It definitely went on for a little longer, but that's a good sign.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to update these links and everything. And whenever your second book comes out, hit me up, dude. I want a copy of it, and come back on the show. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the time and space to share my story. Like I said, I'm, a big fan, and I say that I'm not somebody that fluffs anybody's nuts or is like fanboying anybody, but when I honestly even just talking to my parents, like, you're one of my top 5 podcasts that I listen to all the time, and to be on it and to be part of your content is truly an honor. So, thank you,
dude.
I'm
it's
excited
to read a book that I thoroughly enjoy and have access to the guy who wrote it to come into my living room and chat about it. It's exactly the same sensation, dude. So I appreciate you just as much, man.
Well, I'm here for further collaborations. Maybe our paths will cross someday. Who knows? Maybe we'll explore DMT realms together and whatever. We'll fucking make shit happen.
Hey, let's co-write a Terrence McKenna episode.
Oh, I'd love to.
What do you say? I'll hit you up.
Do it.
All right, let's go. All right,
man. Thanks. I'll be in touch.
Thank you. I'll see you, man.
Bye.
Bye.